These things do happen, honorable members, where you get kicked off by the system because of the network. Before I'm kicked off again, let me just give the logistics of how we are going to do this part. May I welcome, among us, a new member who has been given to this committee by the African National Congress, and that is Honorable Dr. Howard. I hope she has logged in. If she hasn't, I would request that you also introduce yourself. We will not do the normal roll call that Ms. Machalamba does. I will request that you put your screen on and introduce yourself for her to know who are the members that she's going to be working with, because we are not in one room, but we are in this one meeting for now. I'll start, Honorable, after myself, it will be you, Dr. Harvard, the new member, who will introduce yourself, and then all other members will come in there, starting with the members of the African National Congress, coming into the members of the Democratic Alliance, followed by the members of the EFF, followed by a member, or there's an apology from the IFP, followed by the member from the FF+, a member from the ACDP, from the member from the NFP, and the Al-Jamaa, and any other.
Chairperson, are you requesting that we introduce ourselves? Chairperson? Honorable Grimo. Am I correct in assuming that we are to introduce each of ourselves from the various parties?
I am Honorable Sibongiseni Dlomo, the chairperson of this portfolio committee. Can I then move to the next member, starting with the new member? Then we'll go on the way I've indicated. Thank you very much. Honorable Dr. Hubbard. Has the new member logged in, Ms. Machalamba?
Yes, she's logged in. She's logged in, Chair.
Yeah, introducing ourselves in this way was mainly meant for her. Now we will probably bear with that, honorable members. Just get so, and then I'll get to see when she has logged in, so that we do that for. I don't see. Sure.
Okay, so. Thank you.
Has Ms. Dr. Howard logged in? Okay, she will get another chance some other time. Ms. Machalamba, can you do a roll call of the members who have since attended, and then you also do the apologies thereafter? I'll do the welcome remarks as I bring.
Yes, log in.
Please introduce yourself.
Okay, log in. Okay.
Log in, Honorable Harvard, Dr. Harvard, and show your face, please, and introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Can you see the video? Looks is can't see,
No, we can't see you.
can't see the video. Yeah, something. I think something wrong. Yes. Let me see. What is the problem? Yes. Yesterday is fine. Right now, no picture. Let me see.
Is your
Yeah.
system not assisting?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Is Xiaomei Harvard. Nice to see everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable members, just to add on as you introduce, okay, you can switch off your video now, Honorable Dr. Harvard. We will, when you speak, we will always bring your photo to be seen by the camera people. Honorable Harvard, switch off your video now.
Okay, thank you.
Each time you come to speak, please switch on your video. This meeting is live, is captured live in our parliamentary processes and also in other national TV channels. Therefore, request honorable members to introduce themselves, show the video as they introduce, switch off after that, and mute again in the order that I indicated. Thanks. And starting with the African National Congress.
Okay, thank you, honorable member. Thank you.
Are there no members of the African National Congress in this meeting who are members of this?
No, we are here, Chairperson.
Good morning,
Indicated the order of
Chairperson. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, Dr. Hubbard. I am Kenny Jacobs, and a member of the Portfolio Committee and a member of the contingent from the employees from the African National Congress. Welcome to you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, for the opportunity. My name is Anna Gela from African National Congress. I want to
introduce and show the video, please.
Chairperson, I'm having a problem with connection. My apology for not showing my face. But my name is Anna Gela. I'm the member of the Portfolio African National Congress. Thank you very much, Chair.
Chairperson, thank you very much indeed. My name is Chidizi Munyai. I'm a member of the African National Congress and also a member of this Portfolio Committee. Thank you very much, my good Chairperson.
Honorable Tseke.
Oh. Morning, Chair. Morning, Chair and members. My name is Grace Tseke, the alternate member of this Portfolio Committee. Thanks very much. You're welcome, Dr. Harvard, in this committee.
Okay. Okay. If that we are finished, can we move on to the next political party, please? The second, the biggest in the National Assembly.
Good morning to you, Chair, and good morning and welcome to Dr. Harvard. My name is Lindy Wilson. I am a member of the Democratic Alliance and a member of this Portfolio Committee. Unfortunately, we have an apology from Siviwe Kwarube, who is unable to attend this meeting, but on her behalf, I welcome you too. Thank you.
Is it time for EFF, Chairperson?
Hasina
I
Ismail.
thought the all.
Good morning.
Please, let's move on quickly, Miss Ismail, please.
Good morning, Chair. I'm Hasina Ismail. I belong to this portfolio committee. I'm an alternate member. Welcome, Dr. Harvard, and I belong to the Democratic Alliance. Thank you.
Mama Tembekwayo, you can go now. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. It's Dr. Susan Tembekwayo, the member of the Mighty Economic Freedom Fighters. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairperson. My name is Naledi Nogukanya Chirwa. I'm also a member of this portfolio committee, alternate member of this portfolio committee from the Economic Freedom Fighters. Thank you.
Thank you. We move to FF Plus.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, members. My name is Philip van Staden. I'm a member of this committee and a member of Freedom Front Plus. Thank you.
Thank you. The member from the ACDP.
Chairperson, my understanding is that Mari Sukas, I don't know if she has linked on, but the Honourable Mari Sukas is ill at the moment. And I suspect that she has sent in an apology. She's not well at all, and we uplift her in our prayers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, maybe when we come to that, Ms. Machalamba will confirm that I only have an apology of Honorable Kwahube and Honorable Hlengwa. From the NFP.
Thank you very much, House Chair. And let me start off by welcoming the Honorable Harvard to the Portfolio Committee and to Parliament. My name is Ahmed Manzoor Sheikh Imam, member of the National Freedom Party and a member of this Portfolio Committee on Health. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Al Jama or any other party that I might have left behind? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Ms. Machalamba, formally, can we record apologies that came to your desk for this meeting from our honorable members? Ms. Machalamba.
Morning,
Okay.
Chair. It's Lindo Wuhle. Ms. Machalamba has a problem with her microphone.
Do you have apologies? Okay. Can we then record the apology of Honorable Kwahub, who will join us, I think, the second part of today's meeting. She has other engagements for now. Honorable Hlengwa has also sent her apology. For her, I'm not sure whether it's a whole day. Honorable Sukas, as Honorable Wilson is saying, probably not available also. I didn't see or heard anything. Maybe that must be confirmed by our secretary. Let's then move on, honorable members. We welcome the team.
Sorry, Chairperson, before you proceed, may I please make a request?
Yes, go ahead, Honorable Wilson.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and forgive me for interrupting and coming with this before a very important presentation. But we have a concern, Chairperson. We are elected officials on this portfolio committee, elected by voters and representing voters. But there are some concerns that we're having with regards to our portfolio committees. We are unhappy about the way our PC meetings are being managed and chaired. We have concern about access to information when it comes to the portfolio committee. We have severe concerns about timeframes for meetings and in particular notices of important events. And this is creating a situation where we are finding ourselves unable to hold the department and its entities committees to account, which is our job. May we request, Chair, that on the completion of the SAHPRA presentation today, that we as a committee stay behind for a few minutes. We are requesting a very urgent portfolio committee with just portfolio committee members to please discuss these issues and set a date for such a meeting to take place. If necessary, to get the chair of chairs, the Honourable Frolic, to come to that meeting and just to give some clarity on these situations. I thank you, Chair, very much.
Your point is noted. Thank you very much. May I indicate that I note in the meeting here there's Dr. Boitumelo, the CEO of SAHPRA, who will then introduce her team. This meeting is called in because of one, as a chairperson, I've been inundated with a lot of calls, messages from members and the other members of the public with regards to where are we in terms of this medication called Ivermectin, and therefore the members will then get a space and chance to interact with SAHPRA. We have requested members to read the document that has been brought to us, and we have also agreed, and I haven't seen Honourable Wilson's comment, but maybe if she missed out, then there was a discussion that was going on our chat group that we take it in this meeting that the presentation sent to us is taken as read, and therefore if we ask the presenter will not be to take us slide by slide until slide 50, but to summarize so that we can get a lot of time for questions, including maybe a second bite on questions. That is what we have agreed upon, and a lot of members who actually saw that proposal that I made on the group agreed to that approach. So I will now, open for the
Sorry,
CEO.
Chair. Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair.
Let me
Can
finish.
I say?
Can I finish?
Thank
Can I
you.
finish? That the member who the CEO will then present, and but not the slide by slide, summarize the document that has already been sent to us yesterday, and then we give members time, ample time to interact. This meeting is going to go on right until close to lunchtime, and if we need to, and then thereafter in the afternoon, we're having a meeting in the Department of Health in Gauteng. Honourable, I see there are two
Chair,
hands.
my apologies again. We cannot hear you,
Yes.
Chair. Chair, we cannot hear you.
Okay. I see two hands. One hand is Honourable Van Staden, who will come after Dr. Thembekwayo. Dr. Thembekwayo, you wanted to raise something.
Yes, I just want to say to you, Chair, I only received the presentation of SAHPRA this morning at exactly 07:22, taking into consideration that we were invited to the webinar where the EVDS was launched by the minister as at 7 o'clock. And it lasted for an hour and a half. And we are expected to read this document within 30 minutes in preparation for this presentation. Fortunate enough for you, Chairperson, you received the presentation yesterday night. I received it at 7:22 while I was on a webinar. How on earth do you expect us to engage? And you say this presentation will not be done fully to us. It will be bit by bit. It's very much unacceptable, Chair, for SAHPRA or whoever who was sending the information to send us. We had a problem to say we cannot be sent documents today as it happened. Please. Can you attend to that?
Yeah. Look, may I get on our chat group members who got the information this morning? I was not aware. When I received it yesterday, I did not check as to whether there were other members who were left out of receiving the document. Can I get an indication of how many members have received it today? One of them is Honorable Dr. Tembekwayo. Who else?
Me also, Chairperson. You see, Chairperson, sorry, this is a problem we are talking about. I also received a presentation early this morning. And this is what Member Wilson was referring to. We need to talk about our working strategy in this committee. We can't receive presentations 2 hours before the sitting of a portfolio committee of health. We are completely in the dark as members of this portfolio committee. We received our information at this stage through the media and media reports, and that is unacceptable. Chair, this is a big problem, and this needs to be discussed now. And I would request that we go into a committee right now to discuss this matter before we go on with this portfolio committee of this morning.
No. We can't. There's members who have already logged in to make a presentation. I will take what Honorable Wilson was saying, that we need to go in-house after this meeting. We can't repair it now. The only thing we can do now is to request that we then amend what we said. We take the presentation having been read and therefore ask the presenter to go slowly and slide by slide, only for this what I've received now. But we'll go into an in-house meeting after their presentation, please. Because we have already invited them and they are logged in here, and we would assume that they have other things to do thereafter. So for now, until we finish our meeting, which I don't know when, we'll just leave them in the limbo. This has nothing to do with them. It has to do with our administrative processes. Therefore, let us not push a problem and a challenge to the wrong people. Let's do that in-house. I wanted to invite now SAHPRA to do the presentation, but not to summarize, to do it the way that we normally take it. Honorable, I see a hand from the picture there. Honorable Imam Sheikh.
Yes, thank you very much for that, Chair. Chair, no, I know that we've agreed that presentations will be sent to us well in advance. We'll have it ready. We'll prepare our questions. I think what we didn't touch and did not anticipate we might have problems with, which I think we can discuss later on in our meeting, particularly when a presentation that is being sent to us is not satisfactory. There are lots and lots of things that are not, like, I give you a good example. If you're talking about vaccines here, we want to know when were these vaccines made available. So I think we'll deal with that after 1 o'clock when we finish here, like you've agreed. So we can try and close these gaps so that when the presentations come to us, we are ready, we go through it, and then we are able to spend the entire duration of the time allocated to interrogate the reports with the relevant authorities.
Okay. May I request that this hand I see on the platform be the last one? Honorable Kela, please. I have taken the suggestion that we will discuss more in-house after this meeting so that we can then dispense with the SAHPRA. But I do take what Honorable Imam Sheikh is saying, that I was going to also request, when having read this presentation, the SAHPRA has not commented on the progress that it is making in the registration of the vaccines. And we would like to have that input presented by them today. So they might as well start preparing their notes because that matter is going to come from members who would want to add that presentation to this one that they forwarded to us. Honorable Kela.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I want to support your proposal to say that let's discuss it after the SAHPRA has done the presentation. Let's not punish the SAHPRA. Let's allow them to do their presentation. I fully support you, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I therefore request SAHPRA to come in, introduce themselves? I request Honorable
Chair.
Mute gadget.
Chair, may I?
Gadget. Honorable Ismail, are you going to change what you are suggesting?
No, Chair, I'm not anything. I would just like to say that, Chair, I don't know, we're losing you. I can't hear everything that you're saying. But what I want to just, a matter of concern that I'm raising is that since Singh will be going through the whole presentation from SAHPRA, which we've been calling for SAHPRA to come to the portfolio committee, so yes, we welcome them. I just hope that we're not going to be restricted with our time on our questions, Chair. That is the only issue I wanted to bring to your attention.
In fact, if we had read, if the document had not been poorly distributed, we were going to have them to summarize and then we start with the questions. I hope we'll have 2 rounds of questioning, and therefore there will not be any restriction because there's been a lot of requests and cries for this. Honorable Wilson, may I request that you mute your phone and therefore allow the CEO of SAHPRA to then start introducing themselves and then present. I want to also thank them because I now know that they've got a full complement of their staff, something that they have always been indicating that they were not a full complement thereof. So if she can start there, then we take it the process. Thanks.
Honourable Lomo, it's Professor Rees here, and if you allow me, I'm the chair of the board, and perhaps before we do the presentations, I will make some opening remarks to both the question of ivermectin and vaccines, but I'd like to introduce Dr. Tumi Sumete. Perhaps not everybody has had the opportunity to meet Dr. Sumete yet as the CEO, and she will introduce some of the executive who are with us. So I will just pause for quick introductions and then I'll just make some opening comments if that's acceptable.
My apology, Professor Rees. I did not see you on my list here. I saw Boitumelo. Thank you very much. So maybe your name comes right at the bottom. I didn't see it. Thank you. Thank you for coming in, the chairperson of the board of SAHPRA.
Thank you very much. So if it's acceptable, I'll ask Dr. Sumete to introduce herself and her colleagues, and then I'll make some opening remarks.
Good morning, members of the Portfolio Committee, and again, thank you for having us this morning. My name is Dr. Boitumelo Sumete, and I'm the CEO of SAHPRA. I am joined in this meeting by our full executive team. We've got our HR executive, Mr. Gordon Tagati. We've got our Chief Operations Officer, Ms. Kristalna Reyneke. We've got our Board Secretary, Mr. Peter Ntoso. We also have our Chief Regulatory Officer, Ms. Poshan Gambule. And lastly, we've got our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Rehat Hos. This is the full complement, and I'm quite pleased to say, members, that SAHPRA now has a full complement of the executive, and we hope that as we now have the full team in place, we will be able to make good progress in terms of our mandate. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Sumete. Back to Professor Rees now.
Thank you very much. And we are very grateful for this opportunity to present. And I understand that, you know, top of our mind is obviously the questions that you've raised, which are around ivermectin and vaccines, but obviously we're happy to talk about anything that's COVID related. And when we get an opportunity, we can come back and give you a bigger picture of progress overall in the regulatory authority. So I think before I start, I'm just going to give you a bit of a backdrop to ivermectin and to vaccines. So the first thing to say, and I think everyone is aware of this, is that the regulatory authority is tasked with ensuring the safety, quality and efficacy of health products in South Africa, but in the context of our South African settings. So we always take into account not only the social context, but the medical context as we make decisions and recommendations. But safety is really very paramount in what we do. At the start of the COVID pandemic globally, and I've been involved with this work, we recognized that there would not be enough time to develop brand new drugs to address all of the aspects of COVID that we required. That's prevention and treatment of mild disease and serious disease and so on. So instead of that, there's been a global effort to look at old medicines and to do what we call repurpose them if they are suitable for any aspect of the management of COVID. So in that regard, a lot of work went in both looking at the molecules that we have, looking at how they perform and what are their characteristics. And in fact, globally, artificial intelligence has been used to sort through thousands and thousands and thousands of drugs to say which drugs look like they might have a possibility to actually have an impact on some aspect of COVID. For this reason, and if you remember right at the beginning, we were very excited about chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine, both for prevention and treatment. But unfortunately, in the treatment realm where large studies have been done, it proved not to be effective. Similarly, interferon, we were very interested, but large studies didn't support that. We've looked at antiretroviral drugs that we use for HIV, lopinavir, ritonavir being one. Again, sadly, large studies didn't support that for treatment. And then the drug you will have heard about, remdesivir, which is also an antiviral. Larger studies, unfortunately, also haven't confirmed what we really did hope from smaller studies was going to be a significant impact. So against that background, this is where ivermectin had come in. It looked that it might well have antiviral activity in the laboratory. And it also looked as if it might have anti-inflammatory activities as well. And the spectrum of COVID disease starts with what the virus does, and that's when you need antivirals. But later on, and all of us are familiar with this now, when people become very ill, and an inflammatory process takes over. And here you need drugs like dexamethasone, a steroid, to dampen down that inflammatory process. So two different approaches and drugs needed for this entity. So it's against that background, and we'll present the data on ivermectin, that a number of very small studies have been done, and larger studies are in progress. The small studies either didn't show anything or showed some hopeful impact, but not sufficient for anybody to be able to say this definitely works. For that, you absolutely need large studies, and they have to be properly designed studies. Without that, you will not be able to interpret the data. And we've seen this, unfortunately, with, as I say, chloroquine, with interferon, with remdesivir. Small studies looked hopeful, big studies showed nothing. And this is extremely important in the way that we regulators do their business. You have to have really good evidence. And the question of vaccines, and we'll go into the timelines and the registration timelines. As I'm sure you're all aware, we've concertinaed the average 10 to 11 years that it takes to develop a vaccine into less than a year. It's unprecedented. And we've done that by really overlapping the way that we do business. Some of these vaccines were already on the shelf, but we developed them, for example, for MERS and the original SARS, and they were taken off the shelf and repurposed. And other vaccines were being developed for platforms just precisely for this scenario of a pandemic when we have an unknown virus coming out. So we were developing these platforms so that we could put a new virus, in this case, plug it onto that platform. So we did have some things in our cupboard at the start of the pandemic in terms of vaccines that we thought we could adapt quickly, and that's what we've seen. But what we also did is we took the different phases of the clinical trial, phase 1, phase 2, 2B, and 3, and we overlapped them. And because of that, we've consolidated the timeline into under a year, which is unprecedented. However, although we have a lot of safety data from the clinical trials, remember these large clinical trials at the end have tens of thousands of people in them. Safety is an incredibly important point to keep monitoring. With vaccines, some of the serious side effects that you see don't occur once in 1,000. They can occur once in 1,000,000. So you need to be rolling these vaccines out to millions of people, but monitoring for any safety signals. And Tumi will explain that to you, that we are very closely involved with that. And we're doing that as a global partner with the World Health Organization. And all these safety signals are then consolidated globally, because if we see anything at all that's serious, it's likely to be highly uncommon. So that's the backdrop to the vaccines. And Tumi has an entire presentation, and very, very happy to explain this to you in more detail, because I think understanding what the regulator's role is when it comes to something like ivermectin, and why there are almost two groups: doctors who strongly and passionately believe that this is working and that we need to have access, and another group who say this shouldn't be used. So somewhere in the middle, we have to have a regulatory decision that protects people's safety and is very careful about not declaring things effective if we do not have the evidence. Let me stop there and I'll introduce Dr. Semete. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Rees. We also have two members, Helen, from our board who have joined. That's Prof. Shabi Banu, who chairs our technical committee of the board. And we also have Ms. Mandisa Hela, who's the deputy chair of our board, who have also joined us. I'm now going to share my screen, and I'm going to just ask if you can let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, you can see your screen, Dr. Butumelo. Well, thanks.
Thank you. I'll go straight into the presentation. Thank you. So today we thought we'll cover these two pertinent matters. I know you asked us to speak to ivermectin, but we thought we'll also provide an update on the COVID vaccines. So in essence, I mean, there's about close to just under 200 vaccines that are currently under development across the world, and these are at different stages of development. But I thought I'll share with you what are the most advanced vaccines where efficacy data has come out and which have some status of regulatory approval in other countries. So I thought I'll just share on that. So firstly is the Oxford University AstraZeneca vaccine. This is a viral vector and it's administered in 2 doses. This is a vaccine also that AstraZeneca has entered into agreements with other manufacturers across the world to ensure that they make this vaccine available globally. And in this case, they've entered into an agreement with the Serum Institute of India, and that is then the vaccine that we as South Africa have issued a Section 21 authorization. The second vaccine that has published efficacy data, it's the Pfizer vaccine. This is based on an mRNA technology, very similar technology to that of Moderna. These are typically new technologies that have now been made available for vaccines against COVID. We see very good efficacy data coming through from these vaccines, sitting in the range of 95–90%. And these are the ones that have primarily been authorized again in other countries, and I'll speak to that. There's also the Sinovac vaccine, which is an inactivated vaccine where they're using the actual dead virus from the SARS-CoV-2, and then this triggers then an immune response. This is one that has reported an efficacy between 50 to 70%. It's still also under clinical trial. Like many of these, as Prof. Rees have said, these are the ones that were continuously under phase 3 clinical trial, and we will then continue to monitor those. There's also the Sputnik V vaccine. This is an adenoviral vector. There's recent, actually even today, there's been data that has been published that indicates that it has about 91% efficacy. Again, this is a vaccine that's developed by the Russians, and it's still under clinical trial. We then also have the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And in this case, they also, I think it was on Friday when they published their data, wherein they've indicated about a 60% efficacy in South Africa when they looked at the prevalent variant that is circulating in the country. And this efficacy was seen in moderate to severe COVID-19 cases post 28 days. There's another one that we recently got data from, which is the Novavax. This is again was one that also was in clinical trials in the country, and it indicated about a 60% efficacy in South Africa. Again, it was tested against the background of the variant in the country, but also it was tested in the UK, where they saw an efficacy of about 83% against the prevalent strains in that country. what we've noted with all of these vaccines is that at the moment, they do not present with any severe side effects. However, these are continuously being monitored, and I've got a slide which I'll take you through. So these are, I would say, are the front runners that we're keeping our eye on, but we continue to look at all the others as there's quite a number of vaccines that are in development. In terms of what has been submitted to SAHPRA, we've got the Janssen vaccine that was submitted to us in December of last year. And at the point that they submitted, they didn't have the efficacy data. And what we had agreed, with the WHO and other regulators was that as the data is being generated by these manufacturers, we will enable them to submit that data so that we can do what we call a rolling review, so that we don't wait for all the data to be available and then we only start the review then. So we've already started with the Janssen review, and we are hoping that now that they've published this data on efficacy, they've indicated that they will share that with us. We actually have a meeting with them later today, and they will then submit. Then we can do the complete review of this. But this is a vaccine that is currently under review and also was submitted to the European Medicines Agency. So at the moment, no regulator has authorized this vaccine because they were waiting for this data. The second vaccine that has been submitted to South Africa is the one that most of you are familiar with also. It's the AstraZeneca vaccine that was manufactured by the Serum Institute of India. This is the one that we issued a Section 21 authorization for. That's the one that landed in the country on Monday. I'll take you through. We went through a very thorough review of this vaccine. This vaccine also has emergency use listing in the UK as well as in India, and they have made their submission to the European Medicines Agency. The third one that we're currently busy with, and we will be concluding this one quite soon, is the Pfizer vaccine. This is one also that has emergency use authorization in the UK, in the US, it also has WHO emergency listing. While these are the ones that are submitted, we've also been very open to engaging with other vaccine manufacturers. We've engaged with the Russians, we've engaged with the Chinese, and we've even with the ones that are the Novavax vaccine. So with all of these, we've been very open as a regulator to say, let's also guide what are the regulatory requirements. And we've published these requirements on our website. We've shared them quite broadly. And we've been having these engagements with the manufacturers as they generate their data. So we would have what we call pre-submission meetings. So we are expecting that in the next few weeks, if probably even a month, we will start to receive a lot more applications for our consideration. At the moment, these are the three that have been submitted. Very important, what I wanted to highlight here is that while we look at the safety, efficacy, and quality, in this case, we ensured that the vaccine that's manufactured by the Serum Institute is comparable with that that's manufactured by AstraZeneca. We had a number of engagements with both AstraZeneca and the Serum Institute. AstraZeneca is hand-holding each and every one of these contract manufacturers that they've partnered with. They've indicated that they've partnered with close to 20 just to ensure that they can meet the global supply. They handhold them. They ensure that the product that they make is comparable to that of the originator. And they've provided us with that data, and we reviewed it in detail. I must also indicate that the clinical data that we looked at is the same clinical data that was submitted to all the other regulators. And this is something that we've agreed to as regulators, that there'll be what we call a global dossier, so that the data that's submitted, for example, in the UK with the MHRA, it's exactly the same data that we then are provided with as South Africa. And this is to enable expedited review. This is also to ensure that we can share reports and share learnings and share insights with other regulators. Very important also when it comes to quality, what we needed to ensure is that the product as it leaves India is a quality product, and as it lands in South Africa, it's a quality product. So each country has what we call their national control lab, So in the Indian control lab, they tested and they verified the quality of this product. When it landed on Monday at OR Tambo, we had our SAHPRA team there to inspect that during the transport, it was maintained correctly in the cold chain requirements, etc. And we also had our national control lab, so the South African control lab, we had our colleagues there who then collected batches, samples from these batches, and they're busy as we speak assaying these to ensure that the product that we authorize as SAHPRA is the same product that then landed in the country. And once they do that, they will then issue what we call a lot release certificate. And if you heard Dr. Morena also speaking to that's the CEO of BioVac saying this is a critical step for them because that's what ensures that this is a quality product. So we've put that mechanism in place, and all these control labs, they are all accredited by the WHO. So we know that the protocols that are utilized are exactly the same and this consistency. So we're quite confident. And once they get the lot release, we can then say this is a quality product that's been made available in South Africa. The other important aspect that I wanted to highlight, and Prof. Rees mentioned this before, is it's important for us that we continuously monitor the safety of these vaccines and their performance as they're being rolled out. So we've got mechanisms in place, and these are tiered mechanisms where the manufacturers, they report what we call the periodic safety update on a 6-month basis in detail across the world. But to us as regulators, they also give us monthly updates of these periodic safety reports. And also what we have built in, and we're working closely with the department on this, specifically for the one that we've authorized. So the program varies with each one, but at a high level, this is what it encompasses. So we will be getting reports of any adverse events following immunization on a 2-weekly basis. And also what we will do is there'll be a regular review of any information as the product is being rolled out. And also where there are any serious adverse effects following immunization, these will be reported to us within a 24-hour period. There's an online platform that we've put together, a web-based and an app-based platform that will be utilized, wherein those who receive vaccines would be able to log onto that app or to log onto the web-based platform. But also we've got a manual process in place where at the facilities where they receive these vaccines, they can then indicate to the healthcare practitioner what side effects they are receiving. And we're anticipating close to about 1,000 reports on a daily basis. We've strengthened our team. We'll be getting data analysts to come and support us to mine through this data quite quickly so that if there's any adverse effects that are serious, we can pick that up and communicate this, because this is a global platform, and we communicate this to our principals locally, but also communicate this to the global community. So there's a very stringent monitoring process that's in place for once these vaccines are rolled out. I also thought I'll just share in terms of some of the vaccine clinical trials that the country is busy with that we've authorized as SAHPRA. And I must say, as a country, we must be very proud that we're taking part in these global studies, and not only for the vaccines, but also for the therapeutics. So there's, South Africa is really contributing to this global knowledge that's been generated around COVID-19. And I think it speaks to the scientific stature of the scientists in the country. So we really must be very proud of this. So just briefly, we've got the ChAdOx, which is this AstraZeneca trial that's still currently ongoing. It was authorized in June of 2020. We also have a study by Novavax that released their data recently. It's a nanoparticle-based vaccine, so that's also ongoing in the country. We've got the Pfizer study that is ongoing. We authorized it in September. And also one of the studies we authorized quite early in the year was the BCG vaccine, when at the time, we wanted to see if this could be a vaccine that could be considered. This study is ongoing and we continuously get reports on this. There's also the study by Janssen, who have published their data last week Friday, and I mentioned we're meeting with them today. They're also conducting the clinical trial in the study, and the data from South Africa also contributes to the data generated from the studies conducted in other countries. We also have the MMR vaccine that's being repurposed for COVID-19, and it's also being trialed. And this study was authorized on the 25th of September. So this is the measles, mumps, and rubella virus vaccine. We have another one. It's also on an adenovirus-based platform. This is a study that we recently approved now in January. And also we've got a second one that we recently approved also in January, which is a subunit vaccine. So what you'll see is that there's a range of different platforms that are being considered as vaccines. And this is quite helpful because as we have data generated, it's important that all of these vaccines, all of these platforms are evaluated because as there's new data basically being generated, and we need to keep abreast of this, and having a range of technologies is quite helpful. And this is one that we're currently reviewing. It's also another recombinant vaccine. So we're quite happy that South Africa is taking part in quite a number of these vaccines. I'll now flip over then so before I move to ivermectin, I think one of the questions that may come up is, how are we going to manage, or how are we going to manage a situation where someone has received a vaccine and they could possibly get infected? So what we've done, around these platforms that are being put in place to monitor these vaccines as they're being rolled out, is that the platform, as you've noted, individuals will be registering, as the department has indicated, for vaccination. So we'll have their data. We will then be able to follow up. But that platform has been linked to the database for those who, for the testing, on the testing database. So we will be able to pick up when someone has received a vaccine and then test positive. And there's a protocol that's being put in place to study that cohort of those individuals that could would be in a situation where they've received a vaccine and then they get infected. So we will be monitoring this quite closely. So just to now, so focus now on ivermectin, and Prof. Rees has shared a lot of background around this product. But just briefly, as many of you are aware, this is a widely used drug for the treatment and control of parasites in animals, and in humans, it's been used to treat several tropical diseases. However, these tropical diseases are very common. Yes, Chair, sorry. Should I pause?
Sorry to interrupt you. Honorable members, at this juncture, may I start getting your indication through our own platform as to who would like to ask questions, so that as soon as she finishes, I will then start with yourself in the order that you are going to send it to me. I hope that we will get a
I think the chair has dropped off.
Good morning again. If we had dropped the chair there, I think I'll just quickly intervene and try to help. I think with the chair, if the chair is back, you can speak. What the chair was saying, on the usual platform where we send an indication that we want to ask questions, if the honourable members could please do that. And then after you had completed on your presentation on ivermectin, then we'll take those questions. You may continue, CEO.
Thank you very much. Okay. So as I was indicating, it's widely used as a veterinary product, not as widely used in the country for the treatment of these tropical diseases because we don't see a high prevalence of these diseases. But we have issued Section 21 for topical ivermectin for the treatment of scabies, head lice, etc. Again, as part of the background, this is a product that is registered under Act 36. This is an act under the Department of Agriculture as a veterinary product. However, it has not recently been registered for human use. And as I've indicated, where required, where we receive applications, we have indeed issued Section 21 applications for the topical formulation, so the formulation that you apply on your skin. At the moment, it is indeed a Schedule 3 product. So typically what happens is when there's a medicine that's been developed, and in this case, because it was also registered under Act 33, we had to include it in our schedule so that when we do then get an application to register this product, it already has been scheduled and we can indicate the schedule on any registration. So when a product is scheduled, it doesn't necessarily mean that the product is registered, which is indeed the case with ivermectin. It's a scheduled product, but it's not registered for human use in South Africa. We do have an application that was submitted many years ago. I think it was 1988. We had registration by then, but subsequently the registration lapsed. And when we look at some of our historical records and just consulting with some of our team members, the possible reason why the registration lapsed was because there's a very low prevalence of these tropical diseases. And typically that's what manufacturers do, because they have to maintain their licenses. And in this case, we assume that they then decided not to maintain it, and then it's been made available under Section 21. So as we speak, this is not a product that we've registered for human use. You do, however, have those countries where this product has been registered for human use. And now in that case, what could happen is that it can then be utilized off-label, which is what typically happens. If a product has been registered for human use, the medical practitioner can then utilize it, and they take then the full accountability for that product and ensuring that it's safe. And if there's any side effects, they would then also report it to us. However, in South Africa, because this is not registered for human use, we then don't have the off-label mechanism available for us. Prof. Rees alluded to this in terms of why is there this interest in ivermectin while it's an antiparasitic, but that's because lab-based studies, as indicated, have at a high level indicated that this is a product that could inhibit viral replication. We also do have several clinical studies that are going on across the world, and I'll talk to some of the gaps in those clinical studies which have been alluded to in the next slide. Again, this is a drug that's been purported to be of low cost. So when one looks at this lab-based studies and the small clinical trials and the cost, I guess that's why there's this interest for the use of ivermectin. So there's been a number, as I've indicated, of clinical trials that are going on in different countries. There are, however, challenges with those clinical trials, which a number of authors and publications that are listed on the slide have highlighted. These are not sufficiently powered clinical trials. So when Prof. Rees commented earlier, you heard about the numbers that she spoke about for typical clinical trials. These are small. You have a study with about 20, 80, 100. So they're not standardized. They're not properly designed clinical trials. They're not designed to do dose finding ranges and studies. Again, in terms of the severity of the disease that they look at, that's not very clear. So they've got very different endpoints, and they're not adequately designed. And all of these reviews that I'll mention now have alluded to that gaps, to the gaps in those clinical studies. And so we've also looked at those reviews. And because of those gaps, we're not able to, as regulators, be able to make a decision because there's a gap then in terms of the scientific information that's been available. We also understand that there are other clinical trials that are happening across the world, and we're hoping that as data emerges from these clinical trials, we will then get access to that, and we will continuously review. So as SAHPRA, we've been very clear in our communication that we will continuously review any data that emerges. So you may have seen we had a statement that we issued in December where we said ivermectin cannot be utilized. We reviewed the data that came through in January. We issued a statement, on the backdrop of that data. There was then also recent data that was available now, and we issued then the most recent statement. But just to summarize, we've reviewed a number of sources. We looked at the publication by the National Essential Medicines List Committee, and they agree with us. They've done an extensive review of all the data that's available. And their conclusion was very similar to us, that there's insufficient data to enable a regulatory decision to be made, and that if this drug is being used, it has to be used under a properly designed and controlled clinical trial. We also engaged with the WHO, and they're also of the same view. They indicated that the data at the moment is very, very limited. They're working with UNITAID to try to generate and review data from all these other clinical trials that are being conducted, and that indicated that they do not recommend at this point. They do not have a guideline, and they do not recommend the use of ivermectin for the treatment or for prophylaxis due to the insufficient data. The Ministerial Advisory Committee also issued their advisory, where again, they agree with us on this position that the data is just insufficient. We also looked at the Dr. Hill analysis, and some of you may have seen some videos that have been making the rounds where he shares some of these, and he clearly also indicates these gaps in his earlier presentation that was in January, but also in the most recent preprint of a publication where he authored this with other authors. They were very clear that the data is insufficient. There are gaps with the current clinical trials. More data needs to be generated, and the data from these trials is insufficient to enable a regulator to make a decision. And we studied, that publication in detail. We've seen the statement by the National Institutes of Health, where they've indicated that based on what they've reviewed, you cannot unequivocally say this drug has benefits in terms of the management or the treatment of COVID. So the clinical benefits, you cannot say that with certainty, but also you cannot say it causes harm. You may have seen the most recent articles that have come through in terms of the dose that would be required for one to be able to efficiently utilize this drug to treat COVID, in that these doses would be quite high, higher than what is sometimes even indicated for some of these tropical diseases. We've also engaged with other regulators that we work closely with, being the US FDA, the European Medicines Agency, the MHRA, this is the authority in the UK, and all of us are of the same view that there is just insufficient data on this drug, and that the quality of the randomized clinical trials has been extremely, extremely low. We need more data. So even though there is some positive trend, we've seen this even with other drugs, as Prof. Rees has alluded earlier. It is, however, insufficient to enable a regulatory decision to be made. As SAHPRA, we have been very clear also in our communication that we are encouraging that clinical trials be conducted so that we can generate this data. I must say that last week we had a meeting with the scientific community, and we're expecting about 3 clinical trial studies to be submitted. We engaged, it was the University of the Free State, Wits University could possibly also submit, as well as Stellenbosch University. So we're very excited to receive those studies as soon as they come through, and we will expedite the review thereof so that we can start generating data. And while this is the case, where there's insufficient evidence for the clinical benefit of this drug, we've also listened to the external stakeholders. You may have seen in various fora where the medical practitioner are saying people are dying. Here's a drug that could, save lives. We're not certain because, again, the data does not exist. But after this extensive engagement and analysis that I alluded to in the previous in the previous slide, we have noted that there is insufficient data that would indicate a clinical benefit, nor indicate that this drug causes harm. And in the context of the second wave, that we were experiencing, where we saw lives being lost, where we are also acknowledging that there are options. However, these options for treatment are limited. We then had to have, robust discussions internally to say, as we're a regulator that wants to enable, how do we enable access of this product, but enable it in such a manner that it is controlled, such that we know who the product is being given to, we know how that patient is faring. So are there any side effects? Is there any clinical benefit? So that's when we put together this controlled compassionate use access program. And this program has 3 tiers to it. The first tier is to say, we will authorize manufacturers, wholesalers, or distributors. We will only issue it to manufacturers, wholesalers, or distributors that are licensed. And what that does, it ensures that the product that is available is a quality product. We've seen of products that are coming in where it's just a businessman who wants to make commercial gain from this. They bring in substandard product. And we have had our law enforcement team address that quite immediately, because it causes concern and it puts up the public at risk, because they would be taking a product when we don't know what is actually inside that capsule or in that tablet. So we said in this program, and we've published this, it will only be available through a licensed, authorized manufacturer, wholesaler, or distributor. The second tier is that because we want to ensure that this drug is also available at the point of treatment, we will authorize healthcare facilities to keep stock. And this is then to ensure that they also comply with good distribution practices. So they will have the required cold chain, etc., to store the product. And then the last tier is where then the medical practitioner then applies for what we call a named patient. So this is when a medical practitioner says, SAHPRA, can you authorize me to give patient X this much dosage? This is their clinical condition, and I will use your platform to report any adverse side effects. And we've indicated, we'll indicate in this authorization. We've also indicated on the program that we've published on our website, how do they do the reporting. So through this mechanism of controlled compassionate use, we can make sure that the product that comes in is a quality product. It is available and stored in healthcare facilities that are authorized as per the National Health Act. And we know who the medical practitioner has given this product to, at what doses, and if there's any side effects. And this is a process that we've committed ourselves to. We published this last week, Thursday, and we've since then have received a number of applications, and there's already a few that we've started to authorize since last night. So we hope that with this mechanism, we've been able to, as Prof. Rees said, that we needed to be in some middle ground where we are quite cognizant of the challenge that we face as a country. But for us as a regulator, it's important that decisions that we made are science-based. And that's why we've put in place this mechanism, because we will be able to get reports on the performance of this product when it's then been utilized. Chair, I think this is my last slide, and I will end here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Rees. Your presentation was sent very late last night to our secretary, hence the complaint that you get from the members. So we will have to actually, I'm sure that is what actually is going to bring a discussion later on, that it was sent, and Ms. Machalamba has already informed members that she received it around 10 to 10. So that process is very disadvantaging to members, because She was asleep at that time, not able to forward it on time. And we would like to really get an improvement on that. Honorable members, I have received 6 hands so far, and we will start. And if I get kicked out, as it happens,
This has just happened, Comrade Chairperson. Are you there? Has the chairperson been kicked out?
Yes.
may I give the honorable members who are going to start is this following. If I get kicked out, Honorable Jacobs must assist. You are the first one to speak, Honorable Jacobs, Honorable Dr. Jacobs, followed by Honorable Van Staden. The third one, Honorable Wilson. Fourth, Honorable Chirwa. Number 5, Honorable Ismail. And number 6, Honorable Imam Sheikh. Those are the ones I have received so far. In that order, Honorable members, one after the other. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think, Chairperson, we need to get a few things put right here. I think also for the members of the Portfolio Committee. We understand that when we're in a situation as we are with a pandemic, that people clutch at many things trying to find answers to the questions which we have. But we must be informed by the medical sciences here. And medical sciences have evolved over many, many years, and there is quite good reason and good reason for the madness, if one wants to call it that, in what is being proposed by SAHPRA. I am trying to, and I hope you're not going to cut my time, Chair. I think it's very important that we maybe speak about this to the members of the Portfolio Committee so that we don't see members going all over the media, making statements, making requests, wanting certain things to be done, and maybe not having an understanding of what has brought us to here and what the medical sciences are. I'm very happy to have heard the words randomized controlled studies, clinical studies being used by the CEO of SAHPRA. And because out there in the media, everybody's talking about clinical trials, very small studies which have been done. Now, in terms of medical sciences, there needs to be peer-reviewed articles published in peer-reviewed journals, where these are then subjected to peer review, and where through particular criteria, these studies then meet what the robust and rigorous evidence that is required in order for a medicine or a drug, in this case the vaccine or ivermectin, to be used for the public at large. I think we really need to look at this, Chairperson, and really get ourselves as the Portfolio Committee on Health, where this is publicized, even this meeting that we're having now is being publicized, and we need to be able to put this forward. Now, in order for any drug to be put on the market, it needs to qualify in the manner that I've put through a randomized clinical trial in order for the following to happen. That is, I said already, subjected to peer review. It is for drug approval. It is also maybe for funding towards drug development. It has to be read by practitioners to apply the results. It has to be considered feasible. It has to be ethical. It has to be safe, and it has to be efficacious. Now, the question is, in these studies, is 3 questions are asked. What value can we then get from this drug? Because randomized clinical trials are specifically to test the efficacy and the safety of drugs. It's to tell us what can go wrong, what questions need to be addressed, and what is the benefit to be derived from these things. The reporting of randomized clinical trials then become relatively uniform in the world through the publication of the Consort Stadium, which is the Consolidated Standards of Reporting Trials. Now, we need to really maybe engage with these things before we clutch at many so-called opportunities which are set there, or or benefits attributed to particular drugs without us really understanding that, because we have a responsibility of members of the portfolio committee to familiarize ourselves with the importance of what we put out to the public. Now, there are other types of studies, also case control studies, cohort studies, other types of studies I'm not going to go into. But really, all I want to say today is I agree with what SAHPRA had done in terms of understanding the research methodologies and understanding the importance of releasing particular drugs or medicines to the public for its consumption and for its use. And they have a responsibility to make certain that these drugs are safe for use by our communities. I think, Chair, I only wanted to speak on that today. And I congratulate SAHPRA on the manner that they are dealing with these issues, all of these issues. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Van Staden.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I think there's a lot of uncertainty in the public out there about this drug and the vaccines as well. And I think there's a lot of questions on people's minds that they need to get closure to and from, and questions to be answered to get the certainty of what is going on currently with the drug and the vaccine in South Africa. Therefore, I've prepared a few questions that maybe this can get some clarity and get some light on some of these uncertainties which is running around in the public domain. My first question is, if the vaccine is not effective against the COVID virus, will SAHPRA then approve Ivermectin for human consumption and legalize it to treat COVID-19 patients outside of the Section 21? And another question which is running around is, why can't SAHPRA run clinical trials and tests to get evidence by themselves that Ivermectin is or is not safe for human consumption? Why must they wait for a doctor to register such trials, and why can't SAHPRA do these trials by themselves? That is a question which is running in the public domain. Another question on the Section 21 is, do SAHPRA have ability to process these Section 21 applications if it comes in a whole bunch of a lot? And if not, why not? And if not, by what date will SAHPRA have systems in place to effectively deal with these kind of matters? The other question which is running around in the public domain since yesterday is what is SAHPRA's view of the order of the Gauteng High Court yesterday between SAHPRA and other parties? We also want to know, what is the role that SAHPRA is going to be playing in the distribution of a vaccine? We see that this morning that more than 34,000 healthcare workers already registered on the app. Now, how will SAHPRA monitor these citizens that is not able to register via the app if you are going to be playing a role in the distribution of this vaccine? We must remember that most of the population don't even have internet access or the necessary tools to go onto the internet. And we saw that last year by October, only 1 million people used the COVID app out of a population of 60 million. So what is the role that you as SAHPRA will be playing in the distribution of this vaccine is the first question, and to see to it that it's been distributed effectively to the public outside. My last question is, some scientists say the vaccine is sufficient and some say it will not work at all. What is SAHPRA's view on this? Is it wise to import a lot of different vaccines and to use a lot of different vaccines? And should South Africa not stick to one particular product regarding these vaccines? This is just some questions we need some clarity on. Thank you, Honourable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Wilson.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to SAHPRA for the presentation. I have a few questions. So my first question is, and I hope you can give us clarity on this, because we've been asking for a meeting with SAHPRA since the first week of January. And, you know, we've really asked for this many times to get some clarity on the situation. And it then became very perturbing to us when SAHPRA had a press conference with the minister with regards to the situation with vaccines, but this had not yet even been brought before the portfolio committee, despite several requests for it to do so. Can you give us clarity on why that did not happen and why it happened back to front? While any press is good press, it needs to be understood that, you know, SAHPRA do present their annual reports, etc., to this portfolio committee. We are part of the body who holds SAHPRA to account. And I just feel that that was done incorrectly and back to front, and it was quite disturbing. Information came from China yesterday, and I hope that SAHPRA can give us some information on this. What was happening in China is that all the vials in which the vaccine, or a lot of the vials in which vaccines arrived or were distributed in China, those vials were stolen. They were filled, people filled them with saline water and then went out to black market, principally, vaccines, telling people they were getting a vaccine and they were actually getting saline. What are we doing to control the disposal of these vials, keeping the registration of these vaccines in check, and making sure that this incident does not happen in South Africa? We have a huge record of corruption in this country, and I think that is very concerning. Okay, and then again, what role is SAHPRA playing in the tenders that are going out for distribution to various companies? We had a lot of media yesterday on the fact that the Mpumalanga, I think it was Mpumalanga's Premier's daughter, has got a tender for the distribution of the vaccines. And that is obviously very disturbing. We have confirmed that that company was only registered this year in January. But the other reason why I'm asking this question is because vaccines have to be stored and distributed under very controlled environments, temperatures, right facilities, you know, in the right manner. The first thing you told us is that when the vaccines arrived at our airport, the first thing you did was go and check that it had been traveled, packed, and controlled en route to us. And I think that it's vitally important that whoever the distributors are of these vaccines are adhering to the same regulation. So I asked there, that is why I asked, what role are you having in the tender process to confirm that anybody who gets a tender actually is in a position to move these vaccines in the correct manner? I don't know if you can do it, but can you give us an update on what the electronic system stages of the electronic system are with regards to registering people who are getting vaccines? We're about to start the vaccine program, but we have no indications at this stage that the biometrics or data or electronic systems to monitor and maintain the information or data are actually in place. And then I want to go to the vaccines itself and the current trials and the awaiting of approvals and under reviews of the various vaccines that we are looking at in South Africa. Pfizer yesterday stated that, it was also in a press release, that they are in a position to distribute the 20 billion doses that they have orders for, and that they are, you know, on top of that situation. I ask this question because AstraZeneca, and it's on your presentation, Thailand have already used 26 million vaccines, have ordered 26 million vaccines. I think it's 200 million have gone to the EU. Sputnik, Brazil has used already 10 million of the vaccines. Moderna, through the FDA, has a huge is being used in high numbers already in the United States of America, and even Johnson & Johnson. I mean, between the EU and Canada, we're looking at over 200 million doses already there. Now, according to your presentation, a lot of these vaccines are still under review, they're still under trial. And so I'm a little bit confused about the situation. We know that those trials are being completed in those countries. There is peer reviews, there is scientific data. They are being used on hundreds of millions of people already, and yet we are still under review or we are still in trials. I don't understand why, and I hear what Dr. Jacobs has been saying, but when you are dealing with one vaccine that has already been, over 200 million people are using it, why we are so far behind, that's very concerning for me. With regards to Ivermectin, the press has stated, and it's been all over the press, that 6 million rands worth, or 6 million, I'm not sure what's actually dollars or rand, I think it's rand, of Ivermectin tablets were picked up at the airport. 5 people were arrested. Now, I have a concern with that, and I think SAHPRA needs to be involved. Where exactly are those tablets? I'm afraid to say SAPs and our police have a really lousy reputation in terms of keeping, stolen goods and where it goes to, and how easily it goes astray. 6 million rands worth of Ivermectin tablets is huge. There are 6 million people in this country who would love to get their hands on it. There is no Ivermectin available in Limpopo, where I live, because it's being bought out everywhere. So what controls have we got to make sure that that Ivermectin does not go out into the market, on black market, and gets distributed, particularly on the grounds that people don't understand how Ivermectin needs to be used, that it is a weight-based product, that it's only so many mils to so many kgs. And I think at this stage, the potential there is to do huge harm. And finally, Chair, on your discussions on the 3 tiers that have to be followed in order to use the Ivermectin. And I know I know, and I hear what Dr. Jacobs says, but there are people who are really, really desperate, including doctors, who are desperately trying to save lives. And I think very often lives must be obviously lives must be a priority. But we sit with a situation here where the doctors are saying, and there are many who have applied for the Section 21. But when we are dealing with thousands of patients and thousands of, like we are in this pandemic, application on every patient becomes very burdensome. It's huge. And I believe it's an 8-page document. It's tremendous admin. It's terribly time consuming by doctors who are fighting 24 hours a day to save lives. We hear that SAHPRA did say that they would have a response in 24 hours for these doctors. That may be too late for some, but are we indeed in a position to do that 24-hour response to the applications? And then just finally, and it's completely off the mark, SAHPRA, we are waiting to come back to us. We have not yet had your financial reports and your annual reports, and all of those kind of things. And this is what we use to monitor performance. And we would like to see that happen really soon. Please give us an update as to what your status is, because we obviously have a lot of questions about your funding, who's involved, where the funding is coming from, where it is being used, and what the financial status of SAHPRA is. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm going to keep my video off also because I'm struggling with network and I've been kicked out twice already. So my questions are as follows. We are currently of the knowledge that there's 1 million vaccines that came in on Monday. If there can just be clarity on whether, because I know that with the vaccine that we got, AstraZeneca, there has to be 2 shots that are administered for the full vaccination process. Are those 1 million counted in that manner?
or is it basically 500,000 that we have in relation to that? I'm asking this because the NDOH stated that 1.5 million health workers will be vaccinated in the first rollout stage, and yet we only have 1 million vaccines that we are also uncertain how they will be administered to that regard. So if there can be just clarity in regards to that from SAHPRA, I would really appreciate it. And secondly, I strongly believe that SAHPRA has dropped the ball in relation to the Ivermectin issue. From as soon as it came up, you should have been the forerunners of this conversation, of this narrative, and not just reactive in the whole process, which has been your position. And as an entity that's entrusted, especially during a global pandemic, the passiveness in which you displayed is not even a bit. It calls for concern. And my fellow committee members have raised this as well, but I particularly want to know what are the confines in which you work with as per your mandate in regards to clinical trials? Are you unable to facilitate one on your own, or do you just have to wait for people to apply and then only facilitate the application process of the clinical trial? And if you are able to facilitate your own and start your own trial, why this hasn't been done as yet? And I think we'd all like to know what then will be the way forward in regards to that particular issue, because it has been begging for a very long time and these questions are not being answered. In fact, you have to be dragged to court. It's embarrassing as an entity to be so reactive that you have to be dragged to court to administer something that is an obligation that you have as an entity, especially during a global pandemic. Because also I think the reliance on report backs from doctors as per your assertions is not enough for something that we can base on the research that you have, because an entity, you should be able to do much more than that. And thirdly, can we just have a brief summary on how many COVID vaccine trials are being conducted in South Africa currently, and which phase these trials are at currently? And also, we want to know, or I particularly want to know, if South Africa has collaborated with manufacturers like Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Johnson, and what our contributions have been in these collaborations in devising vaccinations and all of that. And lastly, on the issue of storage and distribution facilities that are particularly state-owned, if you have the information, please share with us how many of those are, because I do know that public hospitals and clinics are able to facilitate vaccination programs, or should be able to, because primary healthcare and prevention are our primary mandate as the National Department of Health and obligation. If we can just have a picture of our capacity as a country in relation to storage in particular and distribution. And yeah, this is to my own discretion, because we are basically analyzing the process and the need for issuing a tendering system to begin with, especially to the private sector, which doesn't even have a proper footprint in rural and township areas. So if we can just have a brief understanding of where the country stands in relation to state-owned facilities and equipment that has to do with storage. In particular, distribution one can be addressed separately because it's not the same thing, but in particular in relation to storage. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Honorable Dlomo, it's Professor Rees here. I wonder at this point if I may just make a few clarifications about what a regulator does, because I think that this would help some of the honorable members understand the questions that we can really help with and we should be addressing with you, and those that fall, for example, under the Department of Health or under the research trialists. I'm not sure if Honorable Dlomo is with us.
I'm just going to look under the participants to see if I see
No, I think you're right. He's not here.
He's not here. I think if I understood it, Professor Rees, we only had 6 questions. I think now we possibly have only 1 or 2 left.
No, that's fine. No, that's fine. I think I'm very happy. I mean, if people want to, we can do the clarifying at the end. I just thought it might help people to know which piece of this continuum the regulator is responsible for, but we can by all means come at the end, no problem.
Yes, and I get a full understanding of what you are saying and want to say. I think if we allow the last member or the second last and second last member to complete their questions, then maybe during clarification you can answer those points. I think it's very good those points.
Sorry, Dr. Jacobs, can you check the list, because we are on the list of those that still needs to ask questions, please. It's not
Yes, I am actually trying, and unfortunately the chairperson had not put the list forward as he normally does. But let me see where we are. We have had Honorable Lundy Wilson. We've not had Honorable Ismail.
It's my turn, sir, if I may.
Ismail, I'm going to go for the second one, which is Honorable Chamberkwaya. Then it's Honorable Munyai,
no,
Honorable Ella,
Honorable Iman after.
and Honorable Sheikh Imam, in that order.
Thank you, Dr. Jacobs, and good morning, and thank you for the presentation. It's nice to see you after so long, SAHPRA. Frankly, I would like to just say that, you know, this Ivermectin issue has been going on for too long in this country. I mean, the reason for the delay from SAHPRA has actually led to a very large black market. And it's very sad, although I totally agree that, you know, we need to ensure that the proper trials and so forth has been done. But the reality is that, I mean, people are now dying, and we are in a state where we are losing lives in this country. And from what we've heard from, you know, social media and certain people that we meet in our you know, communities, that Ivermectin has assisted them. So I'm glad that it's about time that, you know, we are discussing this matter. So I have a variety of questions, both with regard to Ivermectin and the vaccines. So I'll just try to run through them quickly. Firstly, can SAHPRA please provide a full breakdown of how many Section 21 applications have you received thus far for the use of Ivermectin? Secondly is that, please can you specify on what basis were vaccine suppliers chosen? This question, why I'm asking is that, is my colleague Lindy has already specified, there are so many vaccine tests throughout the, you know, the country and internationally. And South Africa is a bit on the back step when it comes to this, when we are losing so many lives. Please can SAHPRA provide a full breakdown of all COVID-19 vaccine data available at present? This is inclusive of all. This is inclusive of Johnson & Johnson as well. We know private hospitals have been doing this. We've also heard that, you know, on the black market in different provinces, that, you know, even doctors are getting access to the Johnson & Johnson vaccine trials. And this is something that we have to worry about, because the more we delay, the more the black market is, you know, growing. This may be off the record or maybe coming for a different time, but I have to ask this question because it's somewhere related to our vaccines. Please, can you provide a full report on all donors to SAHPRA for the past 3 years? Is it true that an amount of 70 million rand was donated to SAHPRA by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in 2019 and 20? Look, many citizens are concerned about the safety of these vaccines. How sure are we that those procured vaccines are really safe? I mean, we've already had, you know, something stated in the media to say that, you know what, some of those vaccines doses were already given in half a dosage rather than full dosage. And we're already seeing, and we're already picking up that, you know, there are already issues in South Africa with the administering of these vaccines. Now, we know that South Africa has ordered vaccines from the Serum Institute of India. We also know that this is a private company and nothing to do with the Indian government. We are basically essentially purchasing vaccines at double the price as compared to other African countries. Were there no other options available to South Africa? Why couldn't we source these vaccines from Aspen directly? Is South Africa not many steps behind, although we know that we were, you know, the COVID-19 started already a year ago? Shouldn't we by now be working on making our own vaccines? I mean, is SAHPRA not taking a back step? You should be on the forefront of assisting this country. Right now, where must doctors source ivermectin from? Which SAHPRA approved facility should doctors go to get ivermectin? Or is there going to be a delay in this process as well? Where actually will South Africa source ivermectin from? Will there be a GMP set for ivermectin? I mean, will there be a single exit price set? Will you consider setting an exit price? Have you received any applications from manufacturing facilities from abroad? If yes, how long will it take for a certificate of analysis to be done? And are we going to be delaying for those companies that overseas that are not yet registered? Will you give them a time span to register? Because I'm only worried the longer we take, the longer this, ivermectin will not be processed properly, and the longer, we will have the loss of life. Please also provide a full report on all outside donor research and other programs funded outside the Department of Health. The other issues of SAHPRA I will discuss when SAHPRA comes back to the portfolio committee. Thank you.
Thank you, very good. Thank you, Chairperson. It's my turn, Sheikh Imam. Thank you very much for that. All right. First of all, let me start off by expressing my disappointment with SAHPRA. That before I decided to go the legal route, it is my responsibility to exhaust all internal processes. The CEO is either not reachable or will not want to communicate. The chairperson will do likewise, and the same with the rest of SAHPRA. And that is why I had to go to the legal route in terms of ivermectin. But let me start off with the issue of vaccines. I think one of the questions that I did put forward, and I thought it would be covered in your presentation, which you did not, is the dates when applications have been made for the approval of vaccines, number one, to be purchased. Number two, how is it that vaccines have already been procured when it has not been approved or registered by SAHPRA, even though I'm told SAHPRA is an independent entity from the National Department of Health? And my understanding will be that you first approve it before you buy it. Yeah, we've bought it and we've now procured, if you listen to what the president said the other day, from a whole host of countries, which is not approved by SAHPRA. Then let me go one step further. There is a major difference in the efficacy of these vaccines. The question that arises is, why would we want to also procure from companies, whereas there are others that success rate is much higher? And that is a serious concern for me in terms of that. But let me then come to the issue, particularly of the issue of ivermectin. You have conceded that there is no risk in terms of the evidence you have before. You have conceded that indeed, while there is not sufficient evidence to confirm that it works for COVID-19 or the virus, but there is evidence that you have gone through and reviewed. The first question is, now my problem is, and I think you were going to respond to this when Honorable Jacob said rather you come at the end. Who has the responsibility to be in the forefront of dealing with issues like ivermectin, whether it's the National Department of Health or SAHPRA? Because my understanding is you have a responsibility in terms of registration of drugs. And my view is that the National Department of Health ought to have been in the forefront in trying to accelerate any process and work together with you, because you are not as independent as we think, because if you were, then you will not allow any vaccines to be coming into the country without it being first approved anyway. But having said that, should SAHPRA, together with the National Department of Health, looking at any data that might be available, because you know, and we must admit, there's a crisis with healthcare in South Africa. 45,000 people have already lost their lives, and a lot more if you look at the excess deaths, and depending on the credibility of the stats we are having. Should you not have been in the forefront as well with the National Department of Health? Number one. When did the National Department of Health approach you in terms of looking at the reviewing the data before you? Because prior to you receiving a letter from my attorneys and then others, there was no response or comments from SAHPRA or the National Department of Health in terms of ivermectin. Now, let me tell you what the Japanese scientists that originally invented this for human use said. It is so safe a drug that even an illiterate person can administer this drug, or a non-medical person. So the question I want to ask you, with your experience and knowledge, I'm a layman, I don't know anything about health. Being one of the safest drugs for the last 40 years, I want you to admit that it is not only used in South Africa, which I think you did earlier on, for animal use, because you've considered that it has been used. And I'm sure that the public can now look at this where you are accepting that it's being used for human use. It's been used by 3.7 billion people worldwide. There's never been any reporting of any serious side effects or deaths anywhere in the world in the last 30 or 40 years. In terms of all the research I haven't been doing, maybe I need a PhD by now. But having said that, the question that arises is, you now have agreed to ivermectin to be rolled out in a controlled environment, which, as the NFP, we don't have a problem whatsoever. It's the right thing to do. The measures you're putting in, the bureaucracy, having a doctor who's going to have to fill 8 pages, and those doctors that treat COVID patients treat about 30 patients a day. So I worked it out. Each doctor will spend 4 hours a day just filling application form. Then I want you to tell me, what is the purpose of the application if medical practitioners can approve and can dispense with the drug and then send the application? If it is for you to collate data and look at side effects, I don't have a problem. I commend you for that, because that's the process. In other words, it simply means you are getting the medical practitioner to do part of your trials, because something which we ought to have started sometimes in the early stages when we realized. And I agree with you, this is not a new drug. It's there 40 years in the making, and it has, that's why they call it the wonder drug. Now, the question, the NIH, which was totally opposed to this drug initially, have dropped that now. They are not in opposition to it. While they are not saying it's okay, they are also not saying it's not okay. This is registered as an essential drug on the World Health Organization and the FDA for human use. The only difference, there is not enough evidence, there is evidence that it works for COVID, not enough to satisfy you and a few people in the world. I agree. But that does not mean and should not mean that anything that is at safe, and maybe you're going to have to tell me, what is the worst thing that can happen if anybody took an ivermectin tablet and it did not work for your COVID? Is it all it's going to do, in my understanding from what I've heard, it will only destroy the worms, but there's no other side effect. But if it's in a controlled environment through the experts in the health sector, I agree. So I'm saying you lack consistency, that you will not allow, you did not allow the ivermectin, but simultaneously you allow the purchase of vaccines, which is not approved and looked at by you. And you understand? So I'm saying I have a problem in terms of that. What I want to know, what can you do to accelerate this process and take away this red tape? Leave it in the good hands of the medical practitioners. Let them give you reports, because it's good for them to give you reports so that it can build and review the data before you. But make sure that local manufacturers, to avoid fakes and things coming into the market, that you allow the manufacture of these drugs locally, and that it is in a controlled environment. Then the next question that I have for you, how and when and what authority did you have to suddenly decide and make statements that this ivermectin is illegal? Because it was never illegal, because you've conceded it was also used for human use. Okay, you've now allowing it to be distributed. Since you've called it illegal, I know that processes need to be where it has to be now declared an unlawful or illegal substance. No such process to it. I've gone through the government gazette and everything. I can't seem to find it. But you heavy-handedly decided to ban it for whatever reason. I'm not sure whether it was the interest of our people or interest of somebody else. I'm not sure, but you're going to explain that to me. Now that you've agreed that it's going to be used, am I correct if I say it can't be illegal anymore, this illegality that you have actually imposed? Okay. Then the other thing that I want to know from you is that, let's look at an item. You are responsible for the health of our people in the country, and you say your responsibility is to save lives and protect the lives of people. Now, many of our healthcare workers in South Africa lost their lives because you, SAHPRA, approved some masks and PPEs that were used particularly in our public hospitals, which were substandard, which put our healthcare workers at risk, and many of them have died. Will you then take responsibility for the death of our healthcare workers as a result of your complacency in terms of these particularly these health products? Again, the same thing with vaccines that are coming into the country. It has already been ordered. You did very little or nothing to stop it, even though you had the responsibility, even though the NDOH might have decided to order it. Now, what indemnity is there available for people on the ground who will be taking this? And I hear you saying that there's no serious side effects, and I hope not. And I also believe that people should be taking the vaccine. Yes, I will promote that. However, there is reports of deaths of vaccines that have been taken, the Pfizer vaccine and things. But I'm noticed that you very conveniently seem not to mention this, or whether you haven't seen it. But if you haven't, I'm now telling you that there is such instances where this has basically happened. Now, can you simplify for me the process in terms of this ivermectin? Because it sounds like a very laborious thing, making it very difficult. Millions of people's lives are at risk. We are losing 45,000 people already. There is no risk in terms of safety. What do you believe is the simplest process protecting the lives of our people, and also having that trust and confidence in medical practitioners so that they can do their work and they do best, not paperwork, but saving lives and protecting the lives of our people. So if you can tell me there what you would basically do in terms of that, that will go a long way in helping me to understand your role and responsibility in terms of them. Do you intend conducting any urgent, and I mean urgent, trials in terms of ivermectin, or are you going to rely on that evidence of the doctors? Either way, I don't have a problem if you can just tell us where you fit in terms of that. Now, if you know that I have
you the whole day, if you can please come to a point.
Yes, sir. With due respect, Honorable Jack, that is why we requested 4 hours. We want to exhaust all the concerns that we have. But okay, let me stop here for now. I see that we are ordering vaccines from Johnson & Johnson, which is talking about a 51 or 57% efficacy rate. Can you explain what is the rationale behind that in terms of wanting to order from that particular? And lastly, even though I have about 29 more questions, can you tell us all the different people, including pharmaceutical companies, including the Bill Gates Foundation, the Bill Clinton Foundation, everybody else, wherever you get funding from, how much you have got, when did you get it, and how does that impact on your independence as a regulator, given the fact that some of these people who fund you also are promoters of things like vaccines and certain drugs. But then lastly, I want to go on the issue of red mist?
Shaky Mom, the idea is for us to ask our questions, for the SAHPRA to answer, and we're hoping to have a second bite. So if we could please move on to some other members also to raise.
All right, I'll go for the last one. You've approved this one particular drug. Is it called red mist, something like that? You've approved it. You've now admitted and agreed that it is not effective. And it has been proven without doubt it's not effective. And how is it that you went ahead and approved and registered this particular drug for the purposes of COVID-19 in South Africa? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Shaky Imam. Let me give the list again. The next member will be Honorable Tembakwayo, followed by Honorable Munyai, and followed by Honorable Dlomo. Thank you very much in that order.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to make the SAHPRA aware of the fact that what they presented the other time on TV, as they were presenting with the minister present, is totally different from what they are presenting to us today. Maybe that is one of the reasons why they failed dismally to send us the presentation before the time. And I'm not happy about it. And I would like to know the reason. Why is there a difference in the contents that are presented to us? And then the ones that were presented, they know the day when they presented to the country. And secondly, there is an indication of mistrust. How far do you trust the doctor's expertise in their work? Because as the introduction of Professor Rees indicated, she kept on saying there's not enough time to develop new medicine. And at the same time, when the doctor was presenting, she also kept on repeating that there is insufficient data. There is no, there's not enough time to develop that thing, and insufficient data. Whereas it has been said now that the Ivermectin has been used by billions of people, which obviously means that whatever the information that was used by SAHPRA to influence all those people that they were influencing to accept the fact that there is insufficient data is based on your attitude, the negative attitude that you have towards the medical practitioners of South Africa, of which, according to you, you do not expect them to contribute towards the development of the vaccines in South Africa. And that is not supposed to be that way. So I would like to know from you to say, when are you going to be able to accept that you have to trust that we have good medical practitioners here who can also be able to help us in any production of any vaccines that will save our country. And the second question is, are vaccines for Western countries different from those for African countries? If you say yes, then my following question would be, what stringent measures are put in place to assure the public that vaccines are safe, efficient, and of high quality? And the last question is based on the update on Ivermectin access. On that slide, you wrote less, but the presenter talked more on very important information. We needed that information to be written so that we can always refer to the information that is there. But there was less written information supplied to us. Thank you, Chair.
Very much, Honorable Vunyai, followed by Honorable Dlomo. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Chairperson, Dr. Jacobs. Firstly, allow me to really extend my greatest appreciation for the presentation. And as the ANC-led government and the members of parliament from the ANC, we have full confidence to SAHPRA, a tried and tested organization whose mandate really is unwavering to protect our people. But the fundamental key issues, Honorable Chair, is the following. Ivermectin is not a panacea to COVID-19 solution. And I think so far as understood the presentation from SAHPRA is that there's a data, but not sufficient data and there's not enough So therefore, we support all the efforts that have been put forward by SAHPRA in this regard. But something very important, Honorable Chair, I don't think it is the mandate of SAHPRA to procure any drug. SAHPRA is a regulatory body, as we all are aware. So some questions that relating on what size and so on, and the number and the quantity, that question really follows within the ministry. In this context, therefore, I propose, Honorable Chair, that we indeed convene the Minister of Health to come and brief us on vaccine and the rollout. Those details shall arise. So so far as I understand, my good self, I'm not paid enough money to procure the lawyers to represent the drug companies and so on. I don't. And I'm not, my good self, I'm not going to support, as if we are parading as a representative of the drug companies. That will not really be helpful to ourselves. We need to trust SAHPRA as a regulatory body. We're not going to be convinced by the volumes, how much volumes these drugs is being used anyway. I know it's used for animals. We're not going to be convinced about how many court cases, how many illegal or the black market this exists. We should be convinced by science, scientific approach. SAHPRA really adhere to science, not this rhetoric of the barrage of media propaganda within the social media and elsewhere. No, of what SAHPRA need to do. I think we need to support SAHPRA to be steadfast and really continue to follow science from a pressure group from the legal minds and so on. Because some people, we don't have to speak as we are representative of these drug companies, but we are the representative of the people of South Africa, not of the drug companies. So therefore—
Point of order, Chair. Chair, point of order, Chair.
I also agree with you. There's a point of order here.
Please hold on, Honorable Munyai, point of order. You may continue, Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Yes, Honorable. I think the Honorable member should withdraw his statement. Members here are not taking legal action and things in terms of wanting to promote some drug manufacturers and things. It's totally unacceptable for the Honorable member to make such statements.
Thank you, Honorable Sheikh Imam. Honorable Munyai, you have heard the point of order there.
And myself too, can I be recognized, please?
And you are recognized. Same point of order, Honorable Tembekwayo.
No, I just wanted to say it's our chance. This is an opportunity to ask questions, not to respond on behalf of the presenters or to criticize other members of parliament. It's a wrong platform that he's using. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Munyai. Please continue. And you've heard the request.
Thank you very much indeed. I didn't hear some of the issues because my system was down. But all I'm trying to indicate, Honorable Chair, is that we are the representative of the people, not representative of the drug companies. But I said earlier, these Ivermectin drugs, since there's no sufficient data, scientific data, not just to say there are 2 million people in the market that have been received, doesn't mean South Africa should automatically just approve it. That's not science, it's rhetoric. Now, let me come to this issue.
Order, please.
Can I be allowed to speak, please? I allowed you 2 hours. No, almost.
Point of order.
Just a second, Honorable Munyai, thank you. Honorable Ismail.
Chair, I just want to, put it on record. I think Dr. Munyai is also stating out of context. nobody spoke on ivermectin being used overseas in the hundreds and thousands. Well, the context that I'm reading what Honorable Munyai is saying, this was mentioned with regard to vaccines and the procurement of these vaccines and the usage and the trials of these vaccines. So I think Honorable Munyai must really get his facts straight. I mean, really, and he should stop responding on behalf of SAHPRA. Thank you.
I don't need.
Thank you.
I don't need you.
Honorable Munyai, give me a second, please.
You don't even follow sign. My good honorable member. Let me just.
I took some time out because I had a foreknowledge that this was going to happen today, that we were going to struggle. Just give me a moment.
I'm being disrupted, Chair. I'm
Sorry?
being disrupted. And some members said a good time to present the effect. I agree, therefore, with Dr. Jacob's proposal. And also we should support SAHPRA, and we should not replace it by the judiciary. We should not replace it by rhetoric. And I mean, one of the key issues that I need to put forward is the following. I just make notes here, Honorable Chair, is that if we were to put or to follow emotions and frustrations, not science, as I said, Ivermectin is not panacea to COVID-19. Hence, there are some other drugs that are directly dealing with that particular matters. They have open up a window. SAHPRA open up a window to allow the opportunity to conduct some trial, to look as to what could the impact of this drug be. SAHPRA did not shut the door for the possibility of science. So that's the basis in which the African National Congress support this organization. Let me just conclude, my good chairperson, that the issue of the consolidated standard and also the responsibility to protect our people should be higher than any other issues. I just heard something that's very disturbing, Honorable Chair. We can't use what you call on the matters of vaccine. We know there's a vaccine war in the global space. We know there's a competition amongst race, what we call the race amongst, but let's not use the propaganda or what you call political virus to try to undermine other countries. That could bring a diplomatic.
Thank you, Honorable Munyai. Are you done?
Sorry, Honorable Member, Honorable Chair, was trying to use some media which is not based on facts on a respective of the country. So that issue must be withdrawn before this meeting, because I think if you must bring science, and I think that Honorable the chairperson of SAHPRA was able to present that other countries are using, data analytic, artificial intelligence to review some drugs. If you don't use science, we'll continue to be left behind and run into courts, which is not my view. It's not my role. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Let's continue to support SAHPRA. SAHPRA is one of the powerful organizations within the continent, which really we pride ourselves as the African National Congress, and don't really be demoralized by the number of questions that you may receive. Some I know they're trying to belittle you for no apparent science or reasons. So therefore, as the ANC, we're fully behind you, Prof. Rees, and the team that are here.
Thank you, Honorable Munyai. Honorable Dlomo.
Sorry, point of order.
Chair, you forget me.
Honorable Wilson, your point of order.
Now, I'm sorry, Chair. The Honorable Munyai cannot sit here and make accusations about that we are targeting SAHPRA or that we are trying to belittle them. It is completely out of order. It is unacceptable. And I really I'm really disturbed about it. We are here to ask questions. We are here to get answers. We are here to raise issues, discuss issues that have been raised with us by the people who elected us to this position. And Honourable Moonlight cannot sit there, misinterpret the facts, and use his own assumptions for where this meeting is going. I'm sorry, I take umbrage to that, and I think he must withdraw. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Wilson. Honourable Munyai has completed his input. Can we note your concerns and we note your points of order, and we will be continuing with this meeting after the other members or other participants that left the platform. I would suggest that we continue. Honourable Dlomo is next. We will then listen to SAHPRA to give us feedback and input on the questions and points raised, and then we were still hoping to get another round of questions. So yeah, if we speed it up, you'd all be very fortunate to get another round of very short questions after responses from SAHPRA, and then we will take it from there. Thank you. Honourable Dlomo.
May I come in? Oh, thank you very much. I've started, I'll divide my input. My questions about vaccines I'll do later if I get a second round, because of the area where I am is very
Honourable Dlomo, have we lost you again? Honourable Dlomo?
I think it's muted.
Honourable Dlomo, can you unmute?
No, I switch my camera because I have a challenge in this process. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. I wanted to say I will try and make my input now and make the other input of vaccines later when you give me a second round. Thanks for coming in to assist me in chairing this meeting for the challenge here. I want to say there's a particular principle that SAHPRA is keeping, which is a principle that has long been there even for that organization that they took over from, MCC, a principle that says
We have lost you again, Honourable Dlomo.
Yes. Can you hear me now, Chair?
Yes, please continue. And if you do struggle again and you think it's going to be difficult, you may also pose those questions to me, but please continue.
Yeah, a principle that says when there is a public cry about this and that, we will prioritize processing that medicinal plant or whatever that medication that has been brought in. And I would like to check if that process is not what has been a principle here on SAHPRA, because when you actually get a public cry about a particular medication, you don't then wake up the next day and say, you then can go ahead and use it. You say, I will then make let me send you a question. If I now lose you here, I'll send it down. SAHPRA has actually said we will prioritize this medication and jump the queue and investigate it first on its safety and efficacy. We are not going to make it wait longer than other medicines that have been brought to us for registration. And this is what actually I found them doing. And this is where they need to actually take us into confidence, into have there been a delay in doing that process? The pronouncement that this drug has never been for human use is a correct fact. And if members and they are claiming that there's been huge data available worldwide, then they bring it to SAHPRA, because SAHPRA can only be able to register when there is, because they are the ones who are going to be held responsible for quality and for safety of the drug. They are the regulatory. And then this morning I listened to the court judgment regarding this matter to say, and the doctors in SAMA, the representation of medical officers in the country are saying, we are very cautious, we welcome this, but we would still want to be given space as individual doctors to make sure we can actually deliver a drug that is safe. I actually had to phone and pick up a phone and phone the leadership of SAMA in regards to this matter, that they are actually saying you can't actually bring something that is not scientifically tested on humans. If you do have information, please supply that information in large numbers, but we cannot be able to compel until and unless we have enough information that says this has been tested. Please, SAHPRA, take us into confidence in terms of your processing and whether there's been a delay where you are in this regard. I would like to say maybe there are some questions members asked, which I'm working on a side with the Office of the Minister, because yes, he has to answer some of the questions related to vaccines and other things. But let me pause there for now, because I would like to ask issues about questions about vaccines in a bit later on. If maybe we can allow SAHPRA now to come back and then say something regarding this process, and then we can take second round of questions if members still have. And I'm one of those who will ask a second round.
Thank you, Honorable Dloma. Honorable members, we've had an opportunity to raise any questions and concerns which we have, some more than others, and it's been a hectic discussion. I want to put maybe vigorous discussion, and from the onset I had assumed that it would be as it had played out, and therefore it's important for us just to stay mindful of what the requirements are for the registration of any drugs, and I would advise any of you to go and read up on it and what the importance of those studies are. Having said that, I'm going to hand over to SAHPRA to give any answers to any of the questions raised. You're very welcome, CEO or Professor Rees. Please do.
No, thank you very much. No, you're quite right. This is an important dialogue for us to hear, and indeed, we've been listening very hard to the public dialogue, particularly around ivermectin, but there are many questions on vaccines. So perhaps I could just reinforce a couple of things, and then that would limit our scope of discussion. But a regulator, in a way, if you like, is a bit like the referee. We're given a set of legislation and a set of rules, and we have to make sure that all of the stakeholders abide by the rules. And in doing that, the product the regulator has to ensure is that medicines and health products in South Africa are safe, that they are of good quality, and that they work, and that they are for the benefit of our population, of our whole population. So that is our mandate, and it means that, for example, procurement, pricing, decisions about purchasing, distribution, final administration, for example, of vaccines, that falls under the Department of Health. That doesn't fall under SAHPRA. Clinical trials fall under our researchers. And the question was, how many have we done enough, and have we been doing research, and is there research? South African researchers in the COVID context need to be really congratulated. I mean, we have been a country at the forefront of research, not only for vaccines, but for therapeutics, on a range of things, for how to treat people in ICU. We have really had outstanding clinical and lab-based research, as you've heard the work on the variants. So the research work has gone on out there. SAHPRA's role is never to do the research. SAHPRA will receive a clinical trial application and ensure that the science behind it is good and that it is safe for anyone who's going to participate in it. And once approved, SAHPRA monitors very closely that what is happening in a clinical trial site is actually what people said they would do. So that is the researchers. However, in the role of ivermectin, one of the things SAHPRA has encouraged is that local researchers, in addition to what we know is happening internationally as research, should consider doing studies, because it is such a strongly felt issue, and doctors feel extremely desperate to look for other therapies. So we've encouraged researchers to apply to the regulator with trials. And so far there are at least 3 groups who've said they're interested. But the big trials that are going to keep coming through are actually coming through internationally. But nonetheless, South African researchers have seriously engaged with this issue at the request of the regulator. But the regulator doesn't do trials, doesn't pay for trials. The regulator approves trials and then monitors them and then looks at the results. Because as I say, if we see it as a referee. The other point I would want to make as an overarching point, and I appreciate, and we're thinking hard, and we listen hard. I always listen very hard to what people are saying. And it's very important for the regulator to do that, because we need to respond to not only safety, quality, and efficacy, but also what are the questions people are asking out there to the regulator. So I think that the other thing just to bear in mind is that the regulator has prioritized anything that's COVID related. I'm on the board, I chair the board. I'm not the operational person, and Dr. Simeti will talk more about that. But I can say the board has watched very closely and has really held the executive to account on prioritization. If the board has felt at any time there hasn't been prioritization, then this has been raised. I just want to say a couple of things, and then I'll hand over for more specifics. But on the question of ivermectin, one of the questions to the regulator was, were we listening? Were we proactive enough? Were we hearing what people said? And I think the answer is certainly and yes. We recognize that prescribing and treating doctors, particularly, and healthcare practitioners generally, are desperate to look for better treatments. And we know, unfortunately, that in terms of proven treatments and prevention, and I'm not talking about vaccines now, I'm just talking about other therapeutics, there's very limited that we have. But what we do have, we know works. And what we do have has been shown to work in these large randomized control trials. And we know it works, and we can be sure it works, and we can offer it to patients. But because we heard that there were such strong views on ivermectin, and I must say, we've heard even on this committee, views on both sides, very strong views that it works and should be made available, and very strong views that there is insufficient evidence. Strong views on both sides, which we've heard also on this committee, but we heard that. So we have been proactively looking at the data. We looked at the data and we knew that there were two big review studies coming out. One was what we call a meta-analysis from Dr. Andy Hill, and the other one was our own National Essential Medicines, this committee, which is a systematic review. So we waited for those to come out because they reviewed all of the data systematically. It's a very scientific process, different in each cases. Both came to the same conclusion, that even if there is an indication of benefit in some of these smaller studies, both agreed that there is insufficient evidence at the moment for a regulatory authority to make a regulatory decision. But what everyone, and one of the honorable members made reference to this, including the US National Institutes of Health, he mentioned had changed their position. What everyone is saying, and we've gone to WHO numerous times with requests to get clarification on their view on ivermectin, and in writing, they have said what we are all agreed on, that while there are small signals from these very small studies that there might be benefit, no conclusion can be made that ivermectin is either good for treatment nor that it is bad for treatment. So you can't say it's good and you can't say it's bad. We're at this point of what we call equipoise, that we don't know. And the thing that will break that logjam is actually getting these bigger, well-controlled studies. We've looked into this. We have specialists working with us, and we know that these well-controlled studies will be coming out in February, in March. And by April, we are anticipating that we will have data from a number of different studies on an extra 10,000 people. At the moment, the data is only on just over 2,000 people. That will hopefully be able to, as I say, break the logjam and say, is there benefit or is there no benefit? So that's the equipoise we're in. But in the meantime, we try to find middle ground, because one of our mandates is safety. The situation, and one of the other honourable members quite rightly said that there's an illegal market has developed because of the situation. The situation where people are using veterinary products or illegally imported products that claim to be ivermectin, but nobody, no practitioner who's getting an illegally imported product will have any proof that that is ivermectin, nor, even if it's ivermectin, what dosage it is. Because when you have illegally imported products, you have no proof of quality, and as I say, no proof even that that's the product that you're buying. That situation is a dangerous situation when you're using veterinary and you're using illegally imported products. And that is why we try to, while we wait for the bigger data to come through, which will hopefully, as I say, break this logjam, say yes or no. Does it work? Yes. Does it work? No. And that's what the world is waiting for. That's what WHO is also waiting for. Everyone is aligned on this. While we waited for that, we wanted to make sure that if doctors who felt very strongly that they wanted to have access to ivermectin, and as I say, there are doctors on both sides of the fence who have very different views, but for those who did, at least we can ensure that the product that they apply for and that they give will be a product that's designed for human consumption and where the dosage is known to them, so that they can then take an independent clinical decision. This is called off-label use. Nowhere in the world is ivermectin registered for the treatment or prevention of COVID. And even if none of the vaccines work, to another honourable member's question, if you don't know that ivermectin works, you can't replace something else with something that you don't know that it works. And that is why you have a regulator. It's not sometimes not much fun being a regulator, because you do have to make unpopular decisions where there will be very strong views being held. But I believe on the ivermectin question, this middle ground is wise. And I think it's important to note that SAMA, which is a major professional body, is supporting us in the way that we've managed this. And then the operational questions are legitimate, and I'll allow Tumi to comment. On the vaccine side, as we said, we are responsible for the vaccine trials, and South Africa has been outstanding in the number of trials that we've contributed to, and we can give you that data. But we've contributed so far to the trials for 5 different vaccines that have been in development. And there are more trials that will be on their way. So South Africa's researchers have been outstanding, but SAHPRA's role was to approve those trials and to monitor those trials, not to do the trials. That is not SAHPRA's role. But in terms of the vaccines, the one thing I really want to say, and it hasn't been raised, but I want to share this with everybody here because I think it's incredibly important. The vaccine, when we get the data on the vaccines, it doesn't stop when we get those figures. You've heard the 95%, 94%, AstraZeneca 70%. You've all heard these figures of how effective this product is. One reason it doesn't stop, and there will be more conversations about this as the data emerges, is because we have this variant in South Africa. And we are deeply concerned that this variant will affect the efficacy of some of our vaccines. And again, outstanding South African researchers with global researchers and the vaccine manufacturers are working very hard as we speak to look at what is the impact of the variant in terms of the effectiveness of that vaccine. At its worst, it could really make some of these vaccines ineffective at its worst. But we're hoping that that is not going to be the case, that we might see a reduction in effectiveness, but we have to understand that. And at the same time, the vaccine manufacturers on their side are rapidly looking at not only the South African variant, the UK, the Brazilian, and now in the US, and saying how quickly can we change our vaccines if this variant is shown to not be as responsive to the original vaccines that were developed. So just to say to everybody, that data comes in all the time. The regulator has to think about this data all the time. The ivermectin data will come in all the time, and we are thinking about it. And we were thinking about ivermectin for months, not just because of any court cases. We've looked at the data, we've had meetings on it, we've had board meetings on it, way before there was any court case. And our conclusion was indeed listening to both sides and the demands being made and the very differing views and the safety of the public was to go this middle route. I'll stop there and hand over to Dr. Simete. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof. Rees, for those comments. I'll try to address some of the matters that were raised specifically, but Prof. Rees has already covered some of this. And specifically around the question on, if the vaccine is not effective or SAHPRA authorize ivermectin. I mean, I must indicate that ivermectin, again, we have insufficient data, probably even less, for its use as a prophylaxis. And again, it works very differently to just from a scientific base, very different to what a vaccine would work. So we are seeing these as two different strategies. So a decision on vaccines will not affect a decision on ivermectin. So we look at these quite separately. And again, in terms of the range of vaccines that we're looking at, I think Prof. Rees eloquently addressed that, in that because there's this emerging data, and now we're sitting with this variant, and there's a lot of work happening around characterizing even in other countries, we have to continuously evaluate these vaccines, and we continuously get data on the efficacy of these vaccines. On the question around, people being given saline, and this is where the regulator's role becomes important. And that's why we needed to ensure that as we work with the National Control Lab, samples are taken from the product that has landed in South Africa to ensure that the product that has arrived here is exactly the same product that we have authorized. So we are of the view that, and this is the strength and the confidence that the public must have in having a regulator that makes its own independent decisions, that we can do these assessments and guarantee the quality of a product. And that's why every decision that we made, it has to be science-based. And so we can at least say the quantities that have arrived in the country, they're being assessed as we speak. And when the National Control Lab is satisfied, there will then be a lot release certificate that's issued. In terms of why there's still trials ongoing, I think Prof. Rees again spoke to that, spoke to the issue of these emerging variants. So I will not speak to that in detail. The question around the volumes of the vaccines that have arrived. So yes, what has arrived is only 1 million doses. We are expecting the remaining 0.5 million to come soon. So we're just waiting for a date of that. However, we've authorized the full batch of 1.5 million rand. Again, I just also want to stress the role that we play as a regulator. We are not the ones that conduct clinical trials. Yes, we engage with the scientific community. We've urged them to conduct these trials like we do with many other areas, but we are not the ones that are conducting these trials. We assess that these trials are conducted according to international standards of clinical trials. We assess the data that is generated from these trials, and we are then able to make a regulatory decision based on that. So we cannot be involved in conducting an actual trial, because then we'll be a referee and a player, and that would compromise us as a regulator. And again, I do believe we haven't been passive as a regulator. We have been having a lot of engagement. Our first statement was published in December. And even before then, we have been engaging with other regulators around this drug. There's many other drugs that there is conversations in the background around these. So as regulators, we've really been staying on top of some of these matters. I'm just tackling the vaccine questions for now. I'll come to ivermectin. In terms of the date of application, Honorable Member, I did include that in one of my slides that I presented. So I made an update on the version that I shared on the screen. So those dates have been provided. Also, there was a question that says what clinical trials are conducted in South Africa. I have about 3 or 4 slides that indicated exactly which trials are taking place and when we authorized these trials and what were the stages of these clinical trials. The issue of procurement. So we're working quite closely with the Department of Health. So we are aware of the conversations that they're having with the manufacturers, but indeed, and this is a global and understood approach that all regulators are taking, that no vaccine will be procured even through the COVAX facility if it has not been authorized by the regulator. So I know that the department is having many discussions with the manufacturers, because we needed to have a two-pronged approach as a country, an approach that says we engage with these manufacturers directly while we still also engaging around COVAX. And again, it's to ensure that we can access vaccines as quickly as possible for our country. So we're quite aware of, what conversations they're having in the pipeline, what deals they would like to finalize. And so there is alignment, and there's a lot of engagements between us as the National Department of Health as the procurer. But no product will be finalized in terms of its procurement and landing in the country if it's not been approved by the regulator. I think Prof. Rees also spoke about just the variance in terms of the vaccine efficacy and why we need to continuously do clinical trials. And again, the WHO published quite early on, I think it was sometime last year, where they published what are the minimum requirements for a vaccine to be determined as efficacious. And this has been something that we've all accepted as the regulatory body with the information that we've got now. So all of the ones that would be authorized will fall within that criteria as set by the WHO. I must also just clarify that the presentation that we gave today does not differ to that we gave with the minister. We just took a few slides from that. So the 3 slides that I've shared on the vaccines, if you look at the presentation we gave to the minister, it's exactly the same slides. We just kept them a lot shorter because we also wanted to go into detail on the clinical trials and also to present on ivermectin. But if you would like, I'm happy to share with you the presentation that was shared with the minister, and this presentation has been shared with yourselves. And just lastly on the vaccines, I mean, we can say with confidence that there isn't a difference between the vaccines that are being made available to Western countries and to Africa. As I've already indicated, we ensure we ensure that the vaccines that we receive are indeed exactly the same as, and I made reference to the fact that the dossier or the application that we receive and review as SAHPRA in many instances would be the same application and same scientific information, same clinical information that would have been submitted, for example, to the MHRA. So with the AstraZeneca one, for example, that we've just authorized, we received exactly the same clinical information. With the Pfizer one, we received the same clinical, the same information that was submitted to other regulators. So we can say with confidence that we are getting the same vaccines that all these manufacturers are making. I'll now address the questions on ivermectin, and maybe I'll start with the one around capacity. Yes, we were very much aware when we put together this program that we will need to strengthen our capacity because we did expect large numbers of applications. And I must say, we do have the capacity that we need. We've, even supplemented the Section 21 team. And I can say with confidence that we are coping. If I look at the numbers of applications that we received in January, it was only 27. And now in the last 3 days, we've received 7 that we're going through quite quickly. So I think we do have the capacity to be handling this. Again, we needed to ensure that the capacity is in place as we put out this program. In terms of the decision of the High Court, I must clearly indicate here that we had a press conference on the 27th of January. And at this press conference, this is when we indicated this compassionate compassionate access program. And the discussion around this have started, way since beginning of the year, since December, actually, where we were saying, here are these differing views. This data is insufficient. How do we manage this? So SAHPRA was definitely not influenced by any court proceedings. And actually, I think it was just a coincidence that when we received this court application, we were then in the same time also preparing to communicate to the public around this compassionate use program. And when we then communicated, to the lawyers around this program, and we put this on the table, it was then accepted in the specific case of the AfriForum case. If I look at the others, in terms of what happens when we confiscate products, as part of our SOPs, and this is something that we do as part of how we operate. The product is stored with the police services, then we do analysis on those products. But we do also do regular inspections to ensure that the product is still at those facilities. I'm just going through the notes. So in terms of the sources of the ivermectin, as we indicated in this 3-tier process, this will be available through licensed manufacturers, distributors, and wholesalers. And I must say, in the authorizations that I signed off yesterday, we do have licensed manufacturers that we have authorized, and they probably have their authorization by now as we speak. So again, if there's anyone who would want to know who is a licensed wholesaler, distributor, or manufacturer of ivermectin, we would be happy to make that available. So we have indeed addressed that. I cannot comment on the issue of pricing because there is a pricing committee that addresses this. As a regulator, we do not involve ourselves with the issues of pricing of health products. And whether we've received any international applications, the ones that we've authorized, it has been local companies. But again, because this product is not manufactured locally, it would need to be imported into the country. So we do take note also of the facility where this product is brought in from to ensure that it complies with our GMP requirements. I think I have covered most of the questions. The issue about the process I've spoken to around the bureaucracy in the process, that indeed it's not bureaucracy, it is to ensure the safety of the public. I hope I've covered all the questions, Honorable Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and CEO of SAHPRA, for the very informative answers. You seem to have covered all of those questions. Honorable Dlomo is back online, so I'm going to hand back to him as the chairperson going forward. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for holding on the fort while I was really trying to improve my connection this side. There are members who have already indicated that they would like to just get more clarification further. There are 4 so far. I'll be number 5 unless I get it under hands. The first one will be Honorable Dr. Jacobs, who has just been holding the fort for me as a chair. The second one will be Honorable Imam Sheikh. The third will be Honorable Wilson, and the fourth, Honorable Ismail. If there's any other member, can I hear a voice saying my name? Who else would like to really raise a second bite? Then we'll go with those 4. I will then round up at the end. Thank you very much. Start, Honorable Dr. Jacobs.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. This indeed was a wonderful debate. Very robust, many things said. And at the end of the day, we must be mindful of what our role is and what the role of SAHPRA is. We should really work very hard on not confusing issues. And I'm going to put again that we have a responsibility to the public that as this is broadcast and this is public media coverage, we should be very careful about what we say and do not say. And we should be very careful about making false statements or about putting forward fake news or anything that is not good for the public's viewing. Stuff that we had not ourselves look at the evidence or that we had researched to be true news in this time of social media, etc. I just want to really ask the members of the Portfolio Committee to be very careful about that. And then secondly, if one looks at the, I think while I'm at it, and here I'm referring to what was said by Honorable Wilson about the Premier of Mpumalanga. Before she even had mentioned that the Premier of Mpumalanga had come forward and said that this was fake news, number 1. Number 2, that She does not have any family members who will be involved in the distribution of vaccines. But number three, we've had many times from the ministry and from the department that this is a national initiative, that all of it will be controlled at a national level, and it will then be handed over to provinces to do particular work. We've also heard that it will be completely managed and controlled by the National Department of Health. So I want to reiterate, please let us be careful about what we put out there in the public domain. Research it, make certain that what you put out there is true and factual. Then coming to SAHPRA, we must not forget about the role of SAHPRA, and I'm very thankful that the chairperson and the CEO had put it so clearly. We must not confuse members, the people out there, with the roles of the various entities whom we have oversight over. We need to be clear about the mandates of those different entities, and then we speak within the mandates of those entities so as not again to confuse the public. And it's very simple. SAHPRA's mandate is simple. It is registration and control of medicines and good regulatory practice and standards. And then compliance with the requirements, and this is requirements both in law and the requirements as put forward to them through whatever has been determined to be their mandate. Inspections and law enforcements, etc. That is what SAHPRA does. We've now heard the chair reiterated, we've heard the CEO reiterated, and I would wish that we really, as a unit and as a portfolio committee, we say we have put many allegations out there to SAHPRA. We should really correct ourselves and withdraw those wrongful allegations and statements that we've made to the members of SAHPRA, and that we should go forward together and understanding the mandates of the entities, that as we're engaging with them, we will be engaging with them in a fair and proper manner within the mandate that was given to them. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair, and welcome back. And thank you, SAHPRA, for giving us guidance on your responsibility. And I've always been of the opinion that, yes, indeed, I think the National Department of Health has a greater responsibility rather than SAHPRA. So thank you for that. But first of all, let me ask this question. You talk about that nothing will be procured without being authorized, and I agree with you. But we have gone in public making a statement that we have procured 40 million doses from here, 10 million from there. We have already procured it. That's the statement that was made even by the president of the country. But it has not been authorized by SAHPRA. And that is where my concern, which you haven't responded to, I'd like you to do that. And I hope you're not under any stress not to respond to that. Now, the other thing is this, you know, the Ivermectin, the fact that you have reviewed some of the data, thank you very much for that. And the concession you made, I appreciate that. But remember, medical experts, and contrary to what the member from the ANC had said earlier on, which I don't agree with him, it's not that there's no evidence. There is, which you have considered, maybe not enough, particularly for COVID-19, but they are working on it in any event. Now, the question that we ask is, many of these experts are saying that indeed this is also used as a preventative one, and secondly, must be taken at the very early stages. Now, I'm a little bit concerned about the task of how you're going to deal with the issue of the prevention and also the time frame in being able to give it so it's effective. Maybe you can guide us to that. The third thing, you speak about the manufacturers locally. Thank you very much for that. Maybe if you can take us into your country, let the public know who this is so that when they see a package, they don't buy a fake one and they buy the correct one, which will actually help them, because whether we like it or not, it is being distributed extensively. And I want to correct something. Not everybody is after making money. I have somebody who came into a meeting virtually and said he was willing to buy 50 million and distribute it free of charge. That is how it is. So that's the thing. Then you haven't responded to my question of when did you make it illegal? How did you get the authority to make it illegal? Because you do not have the necessary authority. A process needs to be followed. So I think I'll actually stop. But lastly, that efficacy, 57%. Have you recommended to the National Department of Health, hold on, this one has only got a 57% success rate. Should we or should we not be going in that? I'm sure at least you have the right to. recommend to them. So if you can just guide me on those, I'll appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Honorable Wilson.
Thank you, Chairperson. And I think from the outset, I'd just like to clarify a couple of issues and why I raised questions that I did. We are well aware that the information that went out with regards to the registration of a company and that it was possibly connected to the Premier, etc., we were well aware that that was fake news. And we know that it was a poor rural dweller who has registered a company and made an, has entered a tender to distribute the vaccines. The question was, however, we know that's fake news. We haven't shared it. We all got it at least 100 times. Of that, I am convinced, because the general public referred to us, because we are their elected representatives and they want answers for us. The crux of the question was, if I can put this clear, is that in light of the fact that there are tenders going out for the distribution of these vaccines, and in light of the fact that they need to be properly stored, properly transported at the right temperatures, the question to SAHPRA was, have you been involved in this tender processing? And in other words, have you been asked or tasked to give some kind of protocols on what must appear in a and what requirements will be required in the tender process to ensure that the correct people with the right facilities are getting the tenders? That was the question. I used the example of the Premier's wife as an example only. My question did follow after that. Secondly, thank you very much for the question on saline, or the answer on saline. But again, the question is, do or have SAHPRA been involved, or is there a process in place to make sure that when we dispose of the vials in which these vaccines come, that there is a proper treatment of these vaccines? It can't just be a case of going to a medical waste company, because this is what happened in China. People stole them, filled them with saline, and were selling vaccinations, in inverted commas, basically on a black market, because people didn't want to wait for their turn to be vaccinated. And that for me is a critical issue. Okay, what are we doing with these vials when the vaccines in these vials are finished? Are they going to a special place? How do we control this, and how do we ensure that they don't fall into the wrong hands? It is a sad situation, and the fact that people even consider doing this to innocent victims is horrifying. But it has happened, and we may need to make sure that doesn't happen in South Africa. That was the question. On the grounds that you clarified that no vaccines can be ordered without authorization from yourselves as the regulatory body. Apart from the 1.5 million AstraZeneca, we know we've got the first shipment, has any procurement certificates been authorized for other vaccines? We have a lot of people to vaccinate in a very short space of time before winter comes upon us, and we are potentially facing a third wave. Can you please confirm that for us? And if so, where are they coming from? Who is the vaccine supplier? You did raise the costs. I asked that question on the group. Where we have a situation where one vaccine is a hell of a lot less expensive than another one, and there's a big difference between $4 and $20, particularly in a country that's on a fiscal cliff. Can you give us some kind of assurance, if you can? I know that the procurement is done by the National Department of Health, and not yourself specifically, but we'd like to know that the processes of securing vaccines are not being held up because of the cost factor. And the other question I'll ask, and I'm pretty sure that SAHPRA must be involved in this, is the database that has been established for the registration of distribution of vaccines, who's got the vaccines, who's registered for the vaccines, who's received the vaccines, etc., etc., etc. Are you confident as the regulatory body, as far as vaccines are concerned, that this database, this application system, this registration system is up and running sufficiently, and that you are indeed going to get access to the right kind of information? I thank you.
Honorable Ismail, there's another hand that through
Honorable Chairperson, I shouted a point of order, and I noticed you did not actually recognize me for that point of order. Then I thought you maybe wanted Honorable Wilson to complete, but I would still like to raise my point of order, Chairperson.
Oh, I did not hear you. Sorry for that. To come through.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. We have now noticed what Honorable Wilson had said with regards to having been aware that it was fake news about the story about the family member of the Premier of Mpumalanga. But when I started earlier, I said that we as members who are called honorable members need to be very careful and very clear about what we put into the public space. The perception had been created that there is this dishonesty by the Premier of the Mpumalanga. But actually with Honorable Wilson then affirming that they were aware that it is actual fake news, but not to put it in that context when she raised it the first time is really not being honorable, Chairperson. I would like for her to please apologize to the Portfolio Committee for firstly having put it in the manner that she did, and now saying that they recognize and she recognizes it to be fake news. We need to really be serious about this, that we do not spread the wrongful things out there. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay. Honorable Wilson, you want to comment on that?
Yes, Chair, I do. And I would really like to get the recording of this meeting. I said, in light of the fact that this news was out there and that a company had been registered and that it was potentially linked to the Premier, and that, you know, it had been registered in 2021, that this news was in the public domain. In light of that, could SAHPRA please give us an idea of what they were going to do, or were they involved in the tender processes, so that we could give public the assurance that you know, these kind of things that people were being critical of could not happen, and that they were involved in the tender process to ensure that whoever got the tenders got them on the grounds that they had the facility, the right temperature controls, the right storage facilities, etc. So I'm not going to apologize for what I said. I simply stated that it was in the public domain and that it was a concern of the public who believed this to be true. But in light of that, could SAHPRA give us information on what participation they played in this tender process? I did not accuse the Premier. I did not put anything in the domain. I used it as an example. I will not apologize for it. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. To put it on record, that is fake news. There is no information that is authentic that talks about the Premier of Mpumalanga having her daughter procuring or being part of that process. In any event, the education that we have received to date from SAHPRA is that they are not involved in procurement. Even if you wanted to ask that question, it's not the right platform. Clarify issues of procurement, issues of this, that, and the other. They don't even, SAHPRA has informed us, they're not even involved in clinical trials. They wait for results. So let's take that matter out of this meeting, that one, it was not relevant to SAHPRA, but number two, it's fake news that is involved in this matter. Honorable Ismail.
Thank you, Chair. Let's just put it on record that, you know, we work with our entities. We look forward to having discussions with them. And we like to have that transparency and accountability, you know, at our portfolio committee with our entities. The unfortunate thing is that as portfolio committee members, we practically beg for these meetings, and when these meetings finally arise, we are basically having so many questions, that are unanswered, and we are, elected individuals and public representatives, and we need to give answers to our communities and to the citizens of this country. So SAHPRA officials, please understand where we're coming from. The reality is that we fully understand that, ivermectin as a drug needs to be processed, and, the safety measures, everything needs to be in place, and we totally agree with that. We're not opposing what is being said by SAHPRA as a regulatory, entity. We totally agree with it. But right now, where we are standing after SAHPRA has made, public knowledge where we are with the ivermectin issue, the reality here now is that health professionals are in the dark as to where to source these ivermectin needed as at now. In the presentation, it was stated that public health facilities will be having ivermectin. As you can see, nothing is actually happening right now. I've had calls from doctors last night already. I've had it this morning, just before our meeting started. So there's, besides the communities at large, besides citizens at large, health professionals themselves are not aware, and they need to know what is really going on, where to have access, where to get access to ivermectin, because right now, as we speak, people are dying. And I think that is where we are all, emotional about this matter, because I think all of us here want to actually save lives. So we just need more information as and when available from SAHPRA and all our other entities, and obviously from the Minister and the National Department of Health. And that is where we are about, and hopefully we will have that at our next meeting with, as a portfolio committee. Now, SAHPRA has stated that, we receive reliable data from the South African National Control Laboratory. Can we be told when, and, when can we, as the committee, really get information about this reliable data, and when is it going to be made available to all of us? Due to COVID-19 being, a pandemic, and it's a major health issue in our country right now. As the portfolio committee, we should be updated with all these reports and information, so that we are clued up, and as a result, we know how to answer to our communities, even our citizens at large, even internationally for that matter. When we get queries, at least we know where we are standing. And I think that is where this whole issue is really coming about, to say that, SAHPRA, we want you at the portfolio committee urgently, due to us having to get this information. Look, fair enough, we may be asking some questions that are not related to the entity, and for that, I think, we've been already advised as to, what you do, what is under your scope and what not. So, Chair, I think you need to get, you've heard our questions, you need to get the responsible entities to our meeting with us, and we also need the Minister in the National Department of Health. But on the issue, quickly, on the responses that we received, thank you so much for responding on some of my questions. Yes, I think it would be only fair and right, and maybe, for the matter of transparency, if you could really make available to us in the broader, the broader public, as to who are the licensed wholesalers and distributors of ivermectin. And also, just for the sake of our portfolio committee, the breakdown of the applications received, those that you've allowed, or authorized, and those that you have not authorized. If you could give us a breakdown and tell us exactly why this particular entity or this particular company was not authorized, just for us to have some sort of understanding and knowledge going forward. The issue here also is on ivermectin. I'm worried about the cost factor. Look, we know that it's a high cost for the application, plus the cost of the drug, plus the the cost of consultation with doctors. Now, if you're looking at the need for ivermectin at a very early stage, due to the need to save a life, and we're all looking at ivermectin as the initial process, the initial stage of saving or possibly saving a life going forward. How is this price? I know you have mentioned that pricing is not your mandate, but I want you to address it on the level of the high cost of the application. How is SAHPRA going to address that to ensure that in the long term, ivermectin itself must not become such an expensive drug that even the poorest of the poor cannot afford it when they go to the doctor. Thank you.
Honorable Munyai.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy, Honorable Chair, that you were able to clarify issues of the fake news and
Is Honorable Munyai still talking?
We do not hear him, Chair.
No, Chair.
Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair.
Lost to Honorable Munyai.
I'm saying that I'm very happy that you were able to clarify the fake matters or the fake news that have been leveled against the Premier.
Honorable Munyai, are you there? We are facing the same challenge that I had initially. Okay. Okay, let me then conclude this part of questions before we give back to our SAHPRA leadership. On the very same first two slides, Dr. Dumelo, you showed a particular vaccine from Russia. I don't know what they call it, spook something. Now, having understood the microbiology of doing these vaccines, I got an information that that one is likely to be close to be the best efficacious in terms of having as opposed to the mRNA vaccines. Maybe there are around who are actually might have this information if I'm really ambushing you. But number two, the question that was asked is one question that I think will bring to the attention of the Department of Health, that you do not have a luxury to choose which vaccine you buy as a country. You are processing those that are asking for application. So I think, honorable members, you are actually pushing me, rightfully so, to find a space and time to get the minister, whom I'm hoping, as I was in this meeting, I'm liaising with the office of the minister, that we need to get the minister to come and give us an update on vaccines this week. I hope honorable members will actually take any day and time that might be suitable for that office to really give us an update so that we don't really get it